His family kicked him out when he didn't live up to their expectations, but he didn't give up. The powers of the 5 ancient beasts sleep inside him, and he's called the Trembling Mage. He's no longer afraid of losing. He's afraid of losing control of what's hidden inside. So who's gonna tremble now? Let's find out. Back to 35 years ago. Suddenly, various kinds of demons appeared from the Dark Continent. It was impossible for humanity to stop their invasion. People called it the disappearance of the world. In order to reclaim the stolen territory, all of humanity united. Scientists from all over the world spent 20 years studying the characteristics of demons and discovering magic. But simple magic was only a way to prolong life. Much greater power was needed, and humanity focused on natural phenomena. If magic can awaken what nature itself is capable of, is it possible that nature is something animated? The answer to this question was immediately confirmed. 935 on the Holy Calendar, humanity finally discovered the spirit. The power of spirit magic, obtained by concluding contracts with spirits, is much greater than simple magic. Thus, humanity succeeded in driving the demons back to the Dark Continent. Spirits include 7 attributes: fire, water, wind, earth, thunder, light, and darkness. There is only one Emperor Spirit in each of the 7 attributes. Spirits are divided into 4 ranks: the most basic spirit, the lowest rank spirit, the intermediate rank spirit, and the imperial rank spirit. 5 of them, fire, water, wind, earth, and thunder, are called the 5 Emperor Beasts. It was the power of the 5 Emperor Beasts that turned the demons back. The main character's name is Faye Bonnet. He was raised as a child prodigy since childhood. A group of boys bully a little girl and throw fireballs at her. One of the boys said that beginners cannot use this magic. The girl closed her eyes in fear. Suddenly, a wall of water appeared between her and the boys. Faye said that bullying the weak is low. The boy with curly hair on his head got angry. It was Faye's brother named Bram. He said that Faye had appeared again. The other children on the side were happy that Faye helped the girl. One of the boys said to look to the side. He recognized the boy as Faye Bonnet, a magician who made you shiver. Another boy answered that he was a real prodigy. After some time, Faye, sitting on the couch, made a magic ball and showed it to a little girl. She said what a cool brother. Faye called her by her name Alice and said that if she studied well, she would easily succeed. The younger brother watched this from afar. The older sister Cecilia came up to him. She asked if Bram was so jealous. Why didn't he try himself? Bram got angry and shouted that one or the other of the sisters only talked about Faye. He called his brother names and said that he was also an older brother. One of the boys who bullied the girl was Bram, and Faye used his magic power on him. There's nothing to compare with other children of the same generation. The rescued girl thanked Faye and said that he always saves her. Faye extended his hand to her and helped her up. The people around were touched, looking at this picture. Faye put the girl on his back and carried her home. Alex Bonnet received the title of Duke, and the family is one of the 7 most influential families of the Kingdom of Armando. Faye's eldest son should inherit this title in the future. Because of his enormous magical power, surpassing even adults, and just a masterful ability to control it, he was called a prodigy or a magician who causes tremors. Residents told their children to be sure to be friends with Faye. They admired him. Parents were sure that Faye would become an unrivaled spiritualist. In the Duke's palace, all the courtiers bowed and said, "Welcome back." The Duke and Duchess walked along the corridor where family portraits hung on the walls. Adi Faye's mother said that very soon he would celebrate his 7th birthday. The father said that the time had finally come. Faye looked at his father with fear and asked what if he failed. The father frowned. All children, upon reaching the age of 7, go to church and make a contract with a spirit. Whether a child has the ability to communicate with spirits or not is determined the same way all over the world. If a child fails in making a contract with a spirit, he will always be looked down upon by those around him, and his future career immediately becomes hopeless. Thus, 7 years is a special age that affects the rest of his life. Faye was sure that he could not fail the test. The whole town was talking about the fact that today was Faye Bonnet's 7th birthday. Today he is 7 years old, which means that today is the day of contact with the spirit. Everyone wanted to see it. Today was supposed to be something amazing. The family came to the church, where they were met by the priest. He greeted them and asked them to follow him. Everyone went into the church. Faye was walking in front of everyone. MC froze in surprise. The father asked if he could see this grain of light. This was the spirit. The lowest spirits preferred to live in the church, full of magical power. Spirits of the lowest, middle, and highest ranks preferred nature to churches. The priest said that based on long-standing traditions, MC needed to make a contract with the spirit. He asked to hold his hand over the spirit and show him his magical power. Faye extended his hand to the flying spirit. The parents froze in anticipation. MC exhaled and said that he was asking for the spirit's power, and therefore he was making a contract with him. The spirit pays with its power, and he gives back magical power. If this contract is possible, then he will ask to take his magical power and enter it. Everyone in the church froze in anticipation. The hand is extended in front of the magic ball in which the spirit lies. Glows of power go in different directions. But nothing happens. Someone in the crowd whispered that this is amazing. He really is a prodigy. A magician who makes you shiver. Faye's mother was worried that nothing was happening and turned to her husband. Dear, Alex said mentally, he is his son. Now he will show everyone his strength. Faye began to worry that he was not succeeding. The priest thought that it seemed that they were not compatible. But there was no need to rush. Faye applied even more power to the spirit. Someone in the crowd said that the battle was much more difficult. That's just how it turned out. The whole family watched and did not believe their eyes. The father was upset. Faye was scared. Only Bram said, why did everyone decide that everything would be so simple? MC remembered the words he heard from people, that he was a child prodigy, how people believed that he would become a great spiritual magician, that people were looking forward to the future. Before his eyes stood the face of his father. He remembered the face of his brother, who was always envious. His fate depended on this spiritual contact. He concentrated and used his power again. People were surprised. What a huge magical power. The magic ball with the spirit did not respond. The whole church was illuminated by the light from the power used, and spirits were flying from everywhere. Someone in the crowd asked if the others could see that all the spirits had escaped. People did not understand what was happening. Faye stood there confused. The crowd whispered that they could not believe it, because so much was expected of this child prodigy. The whole family went home in silence. Faye thought that everything was over. It was raining heavily outside. MC was sitting in his room on his bed in complete darkness. The mother asked, what should they do now, dear? She was worried and did not understand how Faye could act so disrespectfully towards his parents. Alex said that if they left everything as it was, and Faye was the heir to the Bonnet family, it would be a shame. Bram overheard this conversation. He joyfully came to his older brother's room and said that it seemed that Faye's greatness had come to an end. MC remained silent. Someone sternly called Bram. Bram was surprised that his brother did not react to his words. Before leaving, he said, see you, loser. Faye thought that from that day on his family became completely different people. Lately, everyone was talking about it. Great and terrible magician couldn't even make a contract with the spirit. Walking down the street, where the residents were whispering, Faye asked, is something wrong? And he received the answer that everything is fine. They said that Faye looked so cheerful in comparison, and fell silent. And when MC left, they started talking among themselves about how he couldn't make a contract, despite his enormous magical power. Faye wondered what went wrong. Why didn't he succeed? Concentration. He needs to concentrate. When he returned home, the maid said that his father wanted to see him and was waiting for him in the office. MC obediently went to his father. Passing by the wall with family photos, he noticed that someone had crossed out his image on the general photo. The protagonist thought about it. Faye entered the office. The whole family was there. His father was sitting at the table, and the others were standing nearby. His father said his name and said that from today on, he was no longer part of the Bonnet family. MC must leave right now, pack his things and leave the mansion. Faye was surprised by what he heard. The faces of his mother and sisters were sad and only his brother was smiling. Faye ran away from the house in what he was wearing out of resentment. He ran for a long time and tears flowed from his eyes. The words were ringing in his head. Faye, show them. Everyone, do as he does. Faye is a good boy. He ran until he tripped over a protruding tree root and fell to the ground. Raising his head, he saw a ball in front of him. He remembered that his sisters gave it to him for his 6th birthday. It was a glass ball, just like he wanted. Somewhere in the depths of his heart, he hoped that someone would stop him, but this did not happen. He lay on the grass, raising his hand up, and watched the ball glow from the rays of the sun. He heard some noise and thought it was magical power. But these were the people who served his father. One of them told MC to forgive them, such is the order of the master. Kill him, and burn the corpse. The servant said that it was his time to die. Fireballs flew towards MC. This was elementary fire magic. Faye created a water wall. This is mid-level water magic. The wall held back the balls and they went out. The servant said that this is not the end. One created a whirlwind and the other lightning. They used the power of wind and fire. In response, C created a fire tornado, mid-level combined fire and wind magic. One of the attackers said that from the movement of his magic power, one can tell that although he could not make a contract with the spirit, he is truly a magician who causes tremors. MC thought that ordinary magicians are less powerful than spiritualists. In the kingdom of Armando, the eldest son usually becomes the heir. If everything went as usual, Faye would be the new head of the family. What Father Alex fears most is just losing the title of Duke and no longer being in the 7 most influential. With his magic, MC could not accept this. He used the power to enchant the body, and at that time, he himself ran away. The servant stood in place and discussed how stubborn the protagonist is. Faye ran very fast, wherever his eyes looked. Non-systemic magic to enchant the body is to bring magical powers into every cell of the body. Magic used to enhance physical abilities. MC fell, and when he got up on his feet, he saw blood on his clothes. But he decided not to stop and run further. Trees flashed before his eyes. It hurt, but he had to run. He can't think. He had to concentrate. If he didn't run, they would kill him. How painful it was. The side effect of magic is pain. Pain gripped his whole body and he fell. Sitting under the tree, he didn't understand why his eyes darkened. He thought, is this really the end? In this place? Just because of one failure? MC gathered his strength and said, no way. No matter what it costs him, he must run away. He will win his life. If he can make a copy of himself with the help of magic, then maybe he will be able to escape. The servants were already nearby. One of the servants asked where MC is hiding. Faye hid behind a wide tree and thought, there must be something, at least some way out. Exactly. If you use volumetric magic and cover it with black magic, you can use medium wave earth magic now and create a clay doll. Add medium level darkness magic and dark matter. Combine them. Combine darkness and high level earth magic, you get a dark doll. The servants noticed MC's body lying on the ground. They decided either he had fainted, or was he tired? Well, he should be burned. Fire tornado. At this time, Faye was lying under a tree and pressing his hand to the wound. He was in great pain. Suddenly, someone asked if he was okay. Faye saw a girl in front of him. She extended her hand to help him. MC was surprised. The girl said that he was definitely not okay and looked sick. She asked him to be patient for a little while. She will heal him now. She asked him not to be afraid. She was just joking. Glowing balls appeared around her hands. She waved her hands and cast full healing. MC was surrounded by bubbles. He realized that this was the highest level water magic, full healing. The wound began to heal gradually. The girl said that everything was fine now. Healing magic is very difficult to master. Full healing is the highest level magic. She used it with such ease. The girl said that there was no need to move much yet. The wound was still not completely healed. Faye thanked her. She added that it was nothing. It was more important to know how he ended up here with such an injury. She waited for an answer to the question, but MC was silent. He did not know if he could tell everything so frivolously. He remembered his father's hurtful words and looked at this sweet girl. She said that everything was fine. She said that she lived in this forest alone, and what he told would remain only between them. She was not his enemy. The protagonist did not understand why she was so interested in his problems. She stroked his head and said that everything was fine. He just had such a scared face now. Faye relaxed and told him everything that had happened to him. After listening to the story, the girl said, who would have doubted it? The Bonnettes will always remain the Bonnettes. Faye was surprised by such words. The girl asked if he had nowhere to go. Maybe he would go with her? She had always dreamed of having a son. Wasn't that fate? MC asked if he could afford to embarrass her. The girl lightly hit MC on the head and said, it would be better to throw away this unnecessary modesty? Well, that's a deal. She introduced herself as Lana Dirk. MC said his name was Faye, and Lana immediately continued, so Faye Dirk, right? MC was surprised. Lana replied that everything was fine. From today on, his name was Faye Dirk. She took his hand and they went home. Lana said, exactly, Faye Dirk. Welcome to the family, Faye. He asked her to take care of him, Lana-san. Lana asked, maybe mom would be better? MC agreed. They were walking through the forest. The sun was shining, flowers were blooming, and birds were chirping. 6 years had passed. In a house in the forest, Faye woke up in a cold sweat. He sat on the bed and tried to come to his senses. The door to the room opened and Lana came in. She smiled and said, good morning, my dear Faye. MC turned his head. Lana sat down next to him on the bed and asked if MC wanted to eat, or would he take a shower first, or would they take a shower together? Faye got angry and said that he did not understand how she managed to come to him as soon as he woke up. Lana replied that she simply cast a spell on his bed so that the bed would notify as soon as MC woke up. The protagonist begged her to remove this spell quickly. Lana touched the bed linen on MC's bed and said, someone sweats a lot at night. Here, in any case, we need to go to the shower together. While she was saying this, MC took clean clothes and ran to the shower. She stood in front of the bathroom door and screamed that there was no need to lock the door with magic. After the shower, there was breakfast, where Lana sat offended. MC joked that she puffed out her cheeks like a hamster. Lana screamed that she was not a hamster. On the table there was a green salad, fresh buns, porridge, and tea. Lana asked if it seemed like the protagonist hadn't slept well today. Faye explained that he had dreamed about the day he first met Lana-san. She asked him to tell her if MC suddenly met someone from the Bonnette family, what would he do? Faye answered that he would do nothing. Lana was surprised that MC would not use his power. 5 years ago, Faye was sitting under a large tree in the forest and practicing using his power. Many forest spirits were flying around. MC's magical power illuminated everything around. Lana said that it was really amazing. The fact that he couldn't make a contract with a spirit seemed like a stupid joke. Suddenly, Lana fell silent and froze. Spirits were sitting on a tree and looking at the protagonist. Lana was surprised that Faye could summon so many spirits. She couldn't believe her eyes. It couldn't be. 5 imperial beasts? 5 cute girls were sitting on a tree. The girl with red eyes is the spirit of fire. The girl with blue eyes is the spirit of water. The girl with green eyes is the spirit of wind. The girl with yellow eyes is the spirit of thunder. And the girl with brown eyes is the spirit of earth. The girls said that they hadn't seen such a strong magical power for so many years. They surrounded MC and began to examine him. Lana wondered what this meant. Faye's power was enormous. One day, 5 heroes banished demons to the Dark Continent. Each of them had a contract with only one of the 5 imperial beasts. The reason why the lower spirits fled the church that day was because they were afraid of such a huge magical power. The girls hugged MC. Lana said that no one had ever been able to make a contract with all 5 imperial beasts at once. Faye added that he had also met Lana-san, and that he was happy. Lana turned away and said that now was the time to show him something. She put a brochure about the National School of Spiritual Magic in the Kingdom of Armando on the table. She asked MC that he knew that at the age of 13, everyone had to take an entrance exam to the spiritual school. She asked MC not to worry because he had already successfully passed the document check. The protagonist was surprised. Lana added that in addition to this, he had to pass some kind of test. Faye thought that maybe he would meet his family. Lena began to explain about the school, that there were divisions into classes. Since he had contact with the higher spirits, he could easily go to Class A if he wanted. MC thought that if the school found out about his contract with the Imperial Spirits, it would be a huge scandal. It would be better for him to be an ordinary magician. Lana asked if Faye knew about the difference in social status between a regular mage and a spiritualist. MC replied that he did not know. Lana continued, he must understand that the power of regular magic and spiritual magic are significantly different. The difference in the power of a regular mage and a spiritualist is huge. That is why the Bonnets tried to kill him. A mage can never defeat a spiritual mage. Everyone knows that. Of course, she was talking about older people. There is also a significant difference between different generations. That is why the status of a mage is significantly inferior to that of a spiritualist. MC thought about it. Lana told about the class system. First graders. There are 5 classes from A to E. Among them, A to D are spiritualist classes. Class E becomes a mage class of exactly 30 people. For spiritualists, there is no limit on the number of students in a class. For mages, exactly 30 people. Faye was surprised. It turns out to be completely uneven. Starting from the second year, there will be another S class. At the end of the first year, there will be a test, and only the top 20 will be able to get into this class. Both types strive to get into the S class. Those who graduate from this class will be given the corresponding status. Ordinary magicians can also enter there. However, there has not been a single such case until now. MC said, so he will study in Class E, the National School of Spiritual Magic of the Armando Kingdom. In each country, there is one institution called a spiritual school. As for the reason, one of them is to protect the country if it is attacked again by demons or anyone else. After the destruction of demons, they can still come back again one day, so the country is making every effort to train excellent magicians and spiritualists to strengthen its strength. The school lasts for 6 years. The entrance exam is at 13 years old. After graduation, there are various career paths. You can become a spiritualist of the royal palace or join the army. Faye is walking towards school in the schoolyard surrounded by other students. Someone from the crowd whispered that it was the Bonnet family. Faye turned around and saw his parents walking proudly. Bram was walking in front of everyone. Next to him were his sisters Alice and Cecilia. Faye couldn't believe that he had met them so soon. MC clenched his fists and reassured himself that he was dead to them. He entered the school, found a sign indicating Class E and went inside. It was written on the board, sit in the seats according to the names written on the desk. Signature Aaron. Everyone looked back at the new student. MC put his school bag on the right desk. At that moment, a guy with blonde hair came up to him and said how beautiful MC's black hair was. Faye smiled. The guy became embarrassed and said that he was probably misunderstood. He likes beautiful girls. He apologized for not introducing himself yet. Then he said that his name was Gayson Downer. You can just call him Gayson. The protagonist introduced himself in response that he was Faye Dirk, and clarified that you can just call him Faye. Gayson thought, where did he hear such a name somewhere? Maybe he imagined it. Gayson immediately asked if Faye had seen the student council president and her vice president. They are awesome beauties with gorgeous bodies. Some girls said that it was too dangerous. And why are all the guys like that? She introduced herself, that her name is Iris Miri. She said that it was nice to meet you and shook his hand. Gayson asked, what about him? Iris said how much noise this gorilla makes. Faye asked them both to stop arguing. Iris said that she had seen Faye somewhere before. Gayson also confirmed this. MC said that they just imagined it. As a child, Faye often attended receptions that his family hosted. This is where they could meet. A voice rang out and said, look, this is Class E. These are everyone's favorite losers. Bram was standing at the door with a couple of guys. Geisen was indignant at what was said. MC stopped him and said that these were the guys from the best class. Geisen said, "So what?" Bram continued to joke. He asked, would some mage really want to fight a spiritualist? Iris shouted, even if they wanted to fight, they had no chance. Another girl tried to calm Iris down. But she continued, does Bram really think that she can't win? The fact that they are in this class, there is nothing to be ashamed of. MC sat and thought that this is exactly what Lana-san was afraid of. One guy from Bram's group shouted that the teacher had come and asked everyone to sit down. The group had to go to their class. But at the end, Bram said that Geisen was on the verge of his death and called him a loser. 6 years ago in the Bonnet family house. The evening when the parents made a decision about Faye, they had an important conversation. Alex said it was about Faye. Adi asked if Alex understood that Faye could not become a spiritualist. Alex answered that Faye was the eldest son of the family. In other words, he should become the next head of the family. But Faye was a simple mage. Adi said that, in principle, someone else could be appointed as the head. Is that forbidden? For example, Bram or Cecilia. Alex asked how they would explain this to His Majesty and the other princes, including the Duke's family. They would just say that because he was a simple mage, could they really say such a thing? Adi asked what Alex was going to do. It would have been better if he had never existed. Bram overheard this conversation. Someone called his name from behind. It was Armand Boswell. Boswell is the head of the Bonnet family through the sideline. In the Bonnet house, he is a butler. In fact, he is second in influence after the current head of the family. Armand and Bram began eavesdropping together. Armand whispered that everyone already understood, but Mr. Alex and everyone else were very worried about what to do with Mr. Faye. Bram said that it looked like it. Armand asked what Bram thought about it. Armand clarified the question. What would Bram want to happen to Faye? The young man did not understand what the conversation was about. Armand asked directly, would Bram want Faye to disappear? Did he guess? Bram smiled and said, yes, that's right. He wants Faye to disappear from this world. Armand hinted that it was well said. Let's rid this world of Mr. Faye? Alex suggested that we should inform His Majesty that a demon attacked Faye and killed him, even if it is a dangerous way. Armand and Bram entered the room. The parents were surprised by their appearance. Armand said that if Faye is banished, but he remains alive, one day they will find out about it and can accuse His Majesty of lying. Bram said that Faye should simply be killed. The parents fell silent. Armand reassured Alex if they wanted to get rid of Faye, asked to leave it to him. He had the best people who would do it. Bram asked his father, didn't he understand everything himself? Those who couldn't make a contract with a spirit have no future, right? Alex thought about it, but later said, kill him. Armand said that he understood the order. Everything will be carried out. A big man entered the classroom. He said that he was the class teacher of Class E. His name is Aaron Gavel. As everyone knows, everyone in this class is an ordinary magician, and he, like all of them, is an ordinary magician. He asked them to love and favor him. The students greeted each other in unison. The teacher said that he wanted to tell him something. The director's policy of this school is to prevent discrimination between spiritualists and magicians. But even some teachers, not to mention the students, can probably look at them like trash. He asked if the students understood what he was talking about. Every year, after the entrance exam, there is always someone who will cling. But mages cannot respond to provocations. If the other side makes the first move, the school rules will be on the side of the mages. Asked to be patient and said that they must become stronger. Suggested to look at the others with pride. All the students in the class unanimously agreed. Backstory. At the age of 7, every child holds a ceremony to make a contract with a spirit, and the results of this contract will affect the rest of his life. Little Faye tries to make a contract with a spirit. All the spirits ran away from him. The talk of the city is only about the Bonnet family. Everyone talks about the prodigy. That Faye could not make a contract with a spirit. Since the Bonnet family has existed, this is simply an unheard of scandal. What will happen next? A conversation on a rainy night. The words of his father, who would have thought that Faye would not be able to make a contract. His mother's words that he was disrespectful to his parents. Mages are tired of spiritualists. If the next head of the family is a simple mage, the family will no longer be in the 7 most influential families. This is a curse. The decision was made to kill Faye. The pursuit of him. Lana, who healed his wounds and sheltered MC. Fear that if his family finds out that he is alive, they will come to kill him again. Faye's thoughts now. This school life. He must not allow anyone to find out the truth under any circumstances. He will behave quietly, lower than grass. Dear students, congratulations to all of you on entering our school. Now the principal will give you a welcoming speech. All the students are sitting in the large ceremonial hall. Geisen, Faye and Iris sat down next to each other. There is a rustle on the stage behind the podium. Someone tries to climb onto the stool. A cute, short girl with 2 ponytails appears. She says, "Dear freshmen, Nice to meet you. She is the principal of this school. Her name is Jessica Friel. A whisper went through the hall. Is this a child? Is she only 8 years old? It can't be that she is the principal. The principal continued in a stern voice that she is 21 years old. The students can rest assured, she has enough magical powers for His Majesty to entrust her with this position. The buzz in the hall continued. Someone said, so young. She is much older than she looks. The principal used her magical power and said that it is just her appearance, nothing can be done. With her magical power, she collected all the conversations in the hall and silence fell. She used the initial magic of the wind, sound memory. By encoding the vibrations of the air with the wind, this magic allows you to store the sound of speech. The assistant principal said that all these statements mean that she is very cute. The principal is incredibly cute. Those who wield this magic usually have some hidden intention. The principal shouted that there was no need to worry. All the students unanimously agreed. The principal continued, this school is an educational institution for magicians and spiritualists, so that they can protect themselves and their loved ones from demons. Over the next 6 years, she suggested that they cast aside their excessive self-confidence and hone their power. After the solemn ceremony, Geisen said, who would have thought that such a young person would be the principal? Faye pulled him up. It was too much. Someone from behind called Faye Dirk. MC looked back and saw 2 men. One of them said that it was necessary to prepare for the document check and the entrance exam. The protagonist remembered Lan's words that he should not worry. He had already successfully passed the document check. It remains to pass some kind of test. MC was surprised. He followed the men. One of the students recognized him as Faye. In a large hall with columns, the first examiner said that for the exam, MC must show the magic he possesses as described in his admission documents. The second examiner added, thus, with the intermediate magic of the 5 attributes and the elemental magic of light and darkness, the protagonist must hit the designated target. Faye thought that Lana wrote before the intermediate magic. Lana said that in fact, of course, he can immediately use high magic, but a newbie who has just entered the school and already possesses high-level magic will cause too many rumors. MC concentrated and summoned the fire attribute is the fire spear, the wind attribute is the wind spear, the lightning attribute is the thunder spear, the earth attribute is the clay spear, and the water attribute is the water spear. He sent all the spears straight to the targets. The examiners were surprised. What precision and power! This is only a first-year mage. The examiner said that this matter was decided. Now you need to show mastery of elementary magic of light and darkness. The conclusion of the examiners is that MC passes. Usually, depending on the attribute, there are strengths and weaknesses, where the power varies, but here everything is at the highest level. Why couldn't this child make a spiritual contract? Amazing. The exam is successfully completed. We must quickly return before he is found. Someone apologized from behind. It was a girl with long hair and big expressive eyes. She asked if MC was Faye. Faye recognized her as the girl he always protected from attacks. The girl introduced herself that her name was Milia Famis. She asked if he had forgotten her. The protagonist noticed a bandage on her arm. MC said it was their first meeting, but the girl insisted he was Faye. MC introduced himself as Faye Dirk, and it was not necessary to call him Sama. The girl was surprised. Wasn't he Faye Bonnet? MC continued the conversation, so the eldest son of the Bonnet family was also called. What was his? But didn't he die from a demon attack? Milia remembered the tragic inscription that the prodigy Faye Bonnet had died tragically. He had been attacked by demons, so there was no trace of his body. She apologized and left. At night, in the school dormitory, MC thought that no one should know who he really was. He remembered the principal's words that they must study to protect their loved ones. They must cast aside their overconfidence and hone their skills. He remembered how he protected her from Braun. He persuaded himself not to be stupid. How many years had passed since then? She must have become strong enough to protect herself. But the abrasion on her arm haunted him. He thought that she had simply fallen somewhere. No one was making fun of her. Besides, his power sometimes brought pain, like that time with Lana. He promised never to use her power again. He must live like an ordinary mage. And so, the morning came imperceptibly. MC stood up, got dressed for school, and looked at the photo with Lana. The way to school went through the city streets, where there were many shops and cafes. MC decided that he could not rely on Lana-san anymore. Will he be able to find some part-time job? Students were slowly gathering in the classroom. The protagonist took his desk. At that moment, Iris entered the classroom and wished him good morning. MC responded to the good wish and asked where Geisen was. Iris replied that she had no idea where that gorilla was. Geisen heard this and asked menacingly, "What was that gorilla?" What did Iris say? MC thought that these two, like a dog and a monkey, were always arguing. Milia entered the classroom. Faye greeted her and wished her good morning. Milia was embarrassed. Iris said, "Oh, this girl." Geisen added that she was so cute and Iris should learn to be like her. So the first lesson is practice. All the students stand in a row, opposite the teacher. The teacher said that from now on, he will teach them magical skills. First, it is necessary to understand the basis of magic and its control. Gaisum was surprised. Magic control? This is his weak point. Iris giggled and asked, does he even have a strong one? Someone shouted that he wanted to do more bright magic. Just training in magic is too common. The teacher did not think that there would be many people who would like this. He sternly told them to calm down and listen to him carefully. After all, they only think about increasing their magical rank. Is he right? As the rank increases, magic becomes stronger. This is both right and wrong. Of course, magical power is proportional to the rank, but if this power is not developed, they will be easily susceptible even to lower rank magic. But if they develop impressive magical power through persistent training, they can even obtain spirit magic. However, if they use too much magic power, they will simply run out of it, causing them to become anemic and lack oxygen. Magic power, come to your right hand. Gaisen summoned the power and aimed it at the enemy and screamed in pain. Iris said it was a disgrace. Amelia stood and tried to summon the power. The boys stood in pairs to practice, and they found it difficult. The teacher said that they should try to make the color of their magic power as close to white as possible. The higher the magic power, the whiter it is. And vice versa, the lower it is, the darker it is. Iris told Gaisen that his power was almost black. He cursed and said that he liked this color so much. The teacher noticed Faye practicing. He was surprised at how pure and strong the magic power was coming out of his hand. Just entering the school and having such power, it was amazing. Someone shouted how beautiful it was. Someone said it was amazing, just Snow White. Someone called MC a genius. Some didn't understand why he was in Class E. Faye realized that he had attracted attention. Amelia looked at him in surprise. Gaisen hugged MC and asked what was that, and he was really awesome. The kids asked how to develop such amazing magic power. They asked him to teach them. Faye made excuses that it was nothing special. He didn't do anything special. It just happened by accident. The thing was that he was terribly upset when he failed to make a contract with a spirit, so he trained hard every day. The teacher said sternly, the main thing is to make an effort. Amelia didn't believe that it wasn't Faye. After class, Gaisen said goodbye to MC until tomorrow and left. Faye said that they had a great time today. Amelia also walked home along the school corridor. Bram noticed her and said, here she is. Faye was almost out of the school gates when he heard a voice. No, stop, please. The voice came from around the corner of the building. The voice seemed familiar to him, and he looked around the corner. Amelia was sitting on the ground. All her clothes were torn. Bram was standing next to her. The guys standing in the distance were saying that they needed to help her. But it was better not to interfere with Bonette. It could have a bad effect on the family. Bram grabbed her by the hair and asked what was wrong. If she didn't stop resisting, she would remain completely naked. Amelia begged that it hurt. She asked him to stop. Bram, with crazy eyes, said that Faye used to bother them. It was pure nostalgia. The support team was screaming. Was there really anyone who dared to go against Bram? In the end, MC couldn't even make a contract with a spirit, a loser. Amelia cried and said that he was not a loser. Bram shouted, stop talking, and grabbed her hair again. MC didn't know what to do. He begged for someone to pass by. But no, everyone was standing far away and didn't want to interfere. He had to leave. No one should know who he really was. He clenched his hands into fists. He must not interfere. He remembered that day again. His father's words. The chase in the forest. A joyful Amelia behind him. The director's words so that they could protect themselves and the people dear to them. Bram raised his hands and prepared to use force. He said that one more time, and Amelia would have nothing to hide anymore. His friend asked, is he seriously doing this? As expected of Bram? He is the devil himself. Bram pointed his hand towards Amelia and said, if she doesn't like it, she must reflect it with magic. Amelia closed her eyes, waiting for the blow of magical power. At that moment, MC appeared and erected a protective screen. He said, isn't it too much? That Bram hasn't changed at all and hasn't grown a bit. Faye apologized to Amelia and said that everything would be fine now. She cried with joy that it was Faye after all. Bandits began to be indignant. Who was he? Bram shouted. If he interfered with him, did he think he could live peacefully? MC asked that Bram did not recognize him. Well, yes, 6 years had passed. Bram did not believe his eyes. It was impossible. Faye asked Bram about how he still enjoyed mocking the weak. He was ashamed that they were once relatives. Faye used full healing on Amelia. She was surprised, but her wounds began to heal. The people around were surprised that MC used full healing. After all, he was only a first year. Bram was angry. After all, water magic is the highest level magic. Full healing? Amelia thanked for the help. Faye saw that she was almost naked and gave her his jacket. Bram did not believe that it was Faye. This was nonsense. The servants completed the task. The body was burned. There was no way he could have survived. Amelia asked what was burned. Wasn't it a demon attack? Bram stood in shock. Little sister Alice came running and recognized her brother. MC said, so that's it? It means Bram knows everything in detail? That means he is involved in this too. That's right, he was killed 6 years ago. And the body was burned. But that burned body was a dark doll created by high-level magic. Bram screamed that this was nonsense. 6 years ago, there was no way he could have used magic of this level. MC continued and said whether to believe it or not was his own business. But that's exactly why he was standing here now. The people around him whispered that using high-level synthetic magic at the age of 7 was chilling. Bram didn't understand what kind of people appeared around him. Faye was in the spotlight again, and then he remembered that it had always been like this. Faye took all his parents' love for himself. How he wished Faye would disappear. Bram couldn't understand why Faye always saved this girl. Wasn't MC afraid that his life would be in the crosshairs again? What a shameful omission. If MC didn't want him to get it too, he'd better leave the girl and get out of here as soon as possible. Faye refused to leave. He asked his brother if he still liked to boost his self-esteem by bullying the weaker ones. Bram asked again, so he liked to bully the weak? He shouted that MC knew that he was just in the weak category for him. Faye stood quietly and listened. Bram was getting angrier and angrier. Magic power was accumulating in his hand. And then Bram used a fire spear. Faye used the same power in response. The onlookers stood to the side and watched everything from behind the trees. They whispered that it was amazing. The same magic, but how different it was. Bram couldn't withstand the resistance and flew to the side. He had thoughts in his head that MC always received love that was incomparable to what he got. MC always made a cool face, as if it was supposed to be like that. Always, always. Alice didn't believe that it was her brother. Bram stood up and said that Faye really thought that the power he received was ordinary magic. MC defeated him in everything except this one power that he got. He summoned a noble spirit, asked him to show his enormous power by feeding on his magical power. Low-ranking spirits are often werewolf spirits. They are docile, easy to handle, and difficult to suppress. But if the spirit gets out of control, its power is inferior to a human's. Bram ordered the spirit to incarnate into the flame of the wolf. He asked MC, "How is he?" "This is the spirit with whom he has contact. Brother can sit down if he is scared." Faye thought that his brother even treats a spirit like a thing. Bram shouted that it was time to finally show who was the tough guy here. Fire needle. Faye confidently used water wall. Bram shouted that his brother was a fool and that intermediate magic could never defeat a lower spirit. Faye asked that Bram really wanted to use spirit magic in a crowded place. Was he going to drag everyone around into it? Bram shouted that he didn't care. He didn't want to think about those weaklings. Faye calmly asked that it seemed like Bram was already out of breath, and he hadn't even reached intermediate spirit magic yet. Is this the limit of his magical powers? Bram shouted that MC shouldn't look down on him. Bram was consumed by rage. He used fire arrow. Faye confidently waved his hand and used water wall. Bram was confused. A huge wave washed him away, but did not touch anyone around. Everyone was shocked by such a fight. The crowd was talking about this precise hit right on target. Amazing control of his magic power. Especially at such an age. It is really interesting. Without a doubt. MC stood proudly. He is the eldest son of the Bonnet family, whom everyone thought was dead. Faye. Angry and tired, Bram ordered his spirit to attack again. The spirit rushed to attack. Bram did not understand what was happening. The spirit stopped moving. Faye calmly replied that this is the magic that he created, and only he can control it. Out-of-system magic. Control of the elements. This magic can even stop spirits for a while. Bram shouted that it is impossible to create such magic. MC replied that this magic simply has some limitations. He can use this magic, precisely because the contract with the spirit did not take place that day. It is quite a long explanation. Bram asked what his brother wants to say. Faye smiled and said, "What is the best thing for him to do?" Bram grinned and asked what MC is going to do. He proudly said that he was Bonnet. Faye said how tired he was of hearing this. Then he used a stone ball and sent it towards Bram. A blow right to the face. Faye said that he hoped Bram would learn a lesson from this. Should he continue to bully the weak? Bram, who was lying on the ground, shouted, "Stop!" Faye launched another stone ball, which landed right on Bram's back. The younger sister, Alice, asked Faye for forgiveness. She did not believe that he was alive. MC told Alice's son that he was not her older brother anymore. Alice was upset. In the dorm, the protagonist went to take a shower. He stood silently under the water. MC thought that he was tired today. He remembered the faces of Alice and Milia. Faye lay down on the bed and thought that he needed to eat. He was very hungry, but he wanted to sleep even more. Some noise was heard behind the door. MC thought that he dreamed it. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. Faye sat on his bed and wondered who could be there in the middle of the night. Could these really be the Bonnet family bandits? MC walked up to the door and opened it. Milia was standing behind the door. She apologized for her sudden visit and asked if she could stay here tonight. Faye was surprised by her arrival. He asked what happened. Milia replied that it was hard for her to stay in that mansion. The protagonist asked about the Bonnet family's mansion. She replied yes. The Famous family is a branch of the Bonnet family. MC asked what happened. Amelia replied that Brahmsan was there, a few hours before. Cecilia asked the crowd of onlookers at the school what happened. She saw Alice among the crowd and asked her to explain. Alice was scared and couldn't really explain anything. She whispered that they were Oni-chan and Oni-chan, they had a fight. Cecilia didn't understand. What Oni-chan and Oni-chan? She saw a dirty and beaten Bram. He said, "It's annoying." Cecilia asked what happened to him. Bram proudly answered, "Nothing." At the Bonnet family's house. Cecilia asked, "How is that nothing?" Wait. Bram answered sharply so that she would leave him alone. Cecilia saw Amelia scared. Bram growled through his teeth so that she wouldn't dare to tell too much. Cecilia tried to calm her down and asked her to tell about what happened. Amelia could only say that Faye was alive. The parents heard this and were very surprised. Everyone who was in the Bonnet family's house was divided into two camps. Those who were sincerely happy that Faye was alive, and those who really didn't like this news. Bram said excitedly that Faye cast a spell, so unexpectedly. When Bram noticed this, he immediately covered Alice with him, because she fainted. Amelia wanted to say that it was a lie. Bram didn't let her do it and said loudly that's exactly how it was, and if he hadn't covered her, she would have suffered too. Alex said there's nothing strange about Faye being angry. Adi praised Bram and said that he was great. Bram smiled and said, how could he have done otherwise? Alice turned to her father and said that everything was not like that. Alex said that Alice should be proud of having such a reliable older brother. Alice tried to explain that everything was not like that. Alex thought about it and asked what was different. Amelia told him about everything that happened at the Bonnet house. She apologized and said that that was why she came here. MC said that it was okay, but how did she know where he lived? Amelia said that Cecilia helped her find out. Faye remembered that she was the vice president of the student council and asked what Bram was doing now. Amelia said that when she left, he seemed to be resting in his room. Amelia suddenly fell to her knees. Faye was speechless in surprise. Amelia said that she asked him to forgive her for not being able to tell Mr. Alex how it really was. She was ready to be punished. The protagonist did not understand what kind of punishment she was talking about. He said that he was not going to blame her for anything. She had done nothing wrong. Outsiders should not interfere so deeply in this problem. Amelia exhaled. Alex would never side with someone who knew the truth. On the contrary, in the near future he would definitely try to remove MC. Amelia sat on the floor and trembled. Faye asked if she was hungry. He offered her a bun and said that he was also a little hungry. A little later, Amelia took a shower. Coming out of the shower, he thanked MC for the bath. Faye showed that he would lie on the floor and she could sleep on his bed. Amelia became embarrassed and said that she had already caused a lot of trouble. This was wrong. The protagonist objected and said that he had always been taught that girls should not sleep on the floor. Amelia suggested sleeping together. Amelia became more and more worried and said that everything was fine. She trusted MC. Faye smiled mysteriously and thought, trusts? Does that mean she doesn't see him as a man? Milu continued, if Faye sleeps on the floor, she will sleep on the floor too. The protagonist said that it was all pointless. It was decided that they would sleep together, like friends. It would be better that way. They went to bed, but Faye couldn't fall asleep. He thought about how he was used to sleeping like this with Lana. Amelia slept soundly, and MC looked at her face. In the morning, the protagonist woke up because of the bright sun. He forgot that Amelia was sleeping next to him and was a little surprised to see her. She opened her eyes and wished him good morning, Faye. MC got out of bed, stretched and responded in kind, and offered breakfast. They came to school together and saw traces of yesterday's battle. Fallen trees and a huge hole in the water in the middle of the sidewalk. MC joked, who could do such a thing? Amelia smiled and said, it can't be helped. Faye wondered what to do if they scolded him, and he said, it would be great if with the help of magic, everything could be fixed. They entered an empty classroom. Faye said that it seemed that they were a little early. Amelia agreed. She handed him the book Practical Application and Effective Use of Low-Level Magic. Nowadays, low-level magic is almost never used, so the question arises, is there any point in it at all? MC was surprised. Amelia explained that for her, who was only able to use low-level magic, who was always bullied, this book was a salvation. Faye asked, did she keep it all this time? And read it so much that the book was worn out. Amelia reminded that he gave this book to her. Faye asked if she wanted to practice magic together like before. Amelia answered that she wanted to. She was so happy that she was together with Faye again, like before. MC said something was wrong. Iris came into the classroom and said good morning to MC. She was surprised that they were chatting so sweetly since early morning, and asked since when were they so close. Geisen joked with MC that he heard everything. Faye clarified that he heard. Geisen smiled and said about what happened yesterday. MC defeated the eldest son of the Bonnet family so easily. Geisen was delighted. Everyone at school is talking about nothing else now. Faye thought that he seemed to have overdone it a little. From the story, the protagonist understood that Geisen does not know who he really is. Geisen asked why Faye was looking at him like that. MC did not understand why Gazan did not bring up the fact that he is Faye Bonnet. Someone in the class said that Faye was amazing yesterday. He was grateful for the kind words and felt relieved. It was like no one knew anything. Gazan hit him on the shoulder and asked what was wrong with MC. He was completely different from usual. The protagonist replied that he was just thinking. The teacher entered the classroom and seeing Faye, called him the Star of Hope. Faye didn't understand what was wrong with Aaron-sensei. The teacher's eyes were filled with tears of joy because the mage had defeated the spiritualist. Wasn't that so? For the first time in history, his dream had finally come true. The mage had defeated the spiritualist of magic. If only he had known that MC actually had a contract with the Imperial Spirits, he would have been disappointed to death. The teacher asked MC if something was wrong. Faye replied that he simply thought that he would be scolded instead. A weight had fallen from his soul. The teacher remembered that the protagonist had been called to the principal's office. He had to go to her right now. Faye thought, of course, how could it be otherwise? He walked down the school corridor with his head down. There was a huge weight on his soul again. He thought, what if they demanded that he pay for the repairs? How would he tell Lana about this? He stood in front of the door to the principal's office and knocked timidly. In response, they said, "Come in." The principal was sitting in a large office behind a high table. She asked the protagonist, "He is Faye Dirk, right?" Then she introduced herself. Her name is Jessica Friel. She is the principal of this school. The protagonist said, "That's right, his name is Faye Dirk." She asked, "He knows why she invited him, right?" The protagonist answered confusedly, "Because of what happened yesterday." The principal confirmed, "There is something she would like to discuss with him. He knows, right, that after yesterday's conflict there was a huge hole in the foundation of the school." The protagonist confirmed this and asked, "Does that mean he should pay for the repairs?" Jessica said that it was not necessary, but he was a good man if he really thought about it. "But besides that, there's something else. The students who were present at your conflict yesterday heard you mention many times that you are Faye Bonnet." She said that she wanted to hear from him what it meant. He thought about it. The principal asked what was the matter. He answered that he was an ex. She was surprised that's how it was. And she asked if it was true that he was kicked out of his family and almost killed. The protagonist confirmed it. The principal was surprised that's how it was. Faye asked if she had made it so that no one would say anything about it, right? She confirmed it and said that she didn't want to cause unnecessary confusion. It's more convenient for adults. The protagonist was very surprised. The principal asked if something was wrong. She was sitting, so small, in such a big chair. She looked about 8 years old. She silently looked at him. He looked at her. Jessica explained that, of course, she would tell His Majesty the King about this, but even despite what happened yesterday, she didn't think there would be any punishment. The Bonnet family are famous people, so to speak, the highest power of this country. It is much wiser to deal with monetary matters than to punish unnecessarily and wait for betrayal. This is his politics. Yes, but on the other hand, inaction will also lead to a loss of authority. She summed up and said that she thought it would be limited to confiscating part of the land. That was enough. The protagonist said that he would not deny that yesterday he responded to the provocation and himself provoked an even greater conflict. The fall of the Bonnets, who only tyrannize their citizens, is only a matter of time. She replied that she thought so too. At least. Then she said no, forget it. Faye asked if that was all she wanted to talk to him about. The director replied no, there was something else. The protagonist asked her what it was. Jessica replied, "Control of the elements." He looked at her in surprise. She said that she was interested in magic that temporarily completely controls spirits and blocks their movement. According to rumors, only he can control it. What is the principle? The protagonist hesitated. Well, he can't answer. The director was surprised and asked why. He used it yesterday. Is it bad for others to know about the existence of such magic? He agreed. Yes, but explain the conditions of use. Jessica was surprised and asked why. The protagonist fell silent and thought. Even if he explained, no one would be able to use it anyway. Besides, there are certain conditions for using this magic. But if he said this, he could be suspected of using the magic of the 5 imperial beasts. He must never allow this to happen. Jessica didn't hear the answer and said okay, she understood it. Faye itself, the fact that the magician defeated the spiritualist will change a lot in the minds of both. This is what she always dreamed of, and for this she wants to thank him. The protagonist resisted. No, this is not something that deserves gratitude. The fact that he defeated Bram yesterday was just Faye's personal whim. She was surprised and looked at him intently. The protagonist asked her if something was wrong. She said no. The principal looked at him and thought, at such a young age to act so maturely, what had he had to deal with? What was really going on in his head? He said, well, he'll go. When he was leaving the office, he saw a lot of books on women's beauty and attractiveness on the shelf. The protagonist was surprised and whispered, the principal is already attractive enough. She didn't hear and asked him again, what? But he had already closed the door from the other side. The protagonist returned to class. Geisen whispered to Faye that he had been absent for a long time. The first lesson had already ended. The protagonist was surprised that they had talked so much with the principal. Geisen didn't stop. Well, what did she say? Faye didn't answer. After classes were over, it was time for lunch. Everyone went to the canteen. Amelia called out to Faye and said that he forgot his fork. He thanked her for that. The four of them sat down at the table. Geisen sat next to Iris, and opposite them were the protagonist Amelia. Iris asked Amelia, "Listen, why does she always add the prefix?" The protagonist answered her that this is an old story, but she is right. Faye turned to Amelia. "Now everything has changed, so maybe it is better to stop adding this?" She was surprised. "What?" He continued. "Really, using a prefix in relation to a classmate is somehow strange, so let's drop it, okay? And formal polite speech too." Amelia asked again, "What?" She thought about it, to drop it, and polite speech too. She tried to call him simply by his name. She could not do it. Iris was sitting opposite her, feeling awkward. A hand suddenly fell on the protagonist's shoulder, and a voice behind him asked if he could stay for a while. Faye froze in surprise. There was a girl standing behind him. She said her name was Cecilia. She was the vice president of the student council. Cecilia turned to Faye Dirk and said that she would like to talk to him. She asked if he could come into the student council office. He put his fork down, turned to her, and asked what if he didn't want to. She insistently asked him to come in. Cecilia turned around and left. He looked after her. It was his sister. After a while, he came to the student council office. He sat down on the sofa and lowered his head. Seeing Cecilia, the protagonist asked, "So what? What's the matter?" She poured tea into the mugs and put the tray on the table. Cecilia replied that the president asked her to call the protagonist here. The president will tell him all the details herself. She should come soon. Faye took a sip from his mug. He saw her looking at him and asked, "What?" She addressed him by name and asked if she could ask him something. MC asked a counter question. "Is this a question from the student council vice president?" She indignantly told him, "What if it was from Cecilia Bonnet?" He crossed his arms and said that he had no desire to answer her questions. He only came here because the vice president called him, nothing more. She clenched her fists in anger and said, in that case, she would ask as the vice president. She asked why he entered the spirit school. To meet them. Faye wondered, why would he want to meet them? Cecilia indignantly asked, wasn't it to take revenge? He replied that he had no intention of taking revenge on anyone. It was just that an acquaintance told him to come to this school, that's all. She asked, surprised, what? The protagonist said that the Bonnet family was just another noble family to him now. She suddenly became happy. So you forgave everyone? Faye looked at her in surprise and thought, did she get something wrong? He clenched his fists and asked menacingly, did she seriously think that he could forgive everyone? He continued, the reason why he was not going to take revenge on them was simply because he did not care about them. He did not want to have anything to do with them anymore. Then, those two, he meant his parents. The stronger he became, the more touching it was for them. He was so happy, and so he tried even harder. That was why he did not notice that love was not for him. Love was for the power that lived in him. This became a very good lesson for him. People are ugly, especially those who try the hardest to look cute. And there is no other choice to protect yourself except to sacrifice yourself, even if it is family. That's why he was taught by none other than Bonnet. So he's even grateful to them. She jumped up and screamed, how dare he? He calmly asked her the same question. And then he said that just now, without even apologizing first, she asked if he could forgive them. She was dumbfounded. Faye continued talking. He knows that not all people are like that. In fact, he met someone warmer than family. Cecilia looked down. She had nothing to say. At that moment, the door opened and the student council president entered the office. She smiled and apologized for being late. She saw their faces and asked, Oh, what kind of atmosphere is this? Then she turned to Cecilia and asked if it was time for her to go back to class. The protagonist sat and thought. Cecilia thanked her for the reminder and said that she would do so. The president turned to Faye Dirk and said that they haven't seen each other for a long time. She introduced herself. Her name is Layla Moret. She asked MC if he remembered her. The Moret family, like the Bonnets, is one of the 7 richest families in Armando. About 10 years ago, Duke Moret was promoted to Marquis, after which their family became one of the most influential in the kingdom. He confirmed and asked what was the matter. Layla answered that there were 2 reasons why she called him here. The first was to meet Cecilia. Faye chuckled at this. Then she said that the second reason was because she needed him. He was surprised and asked what. She answered, it seems he thought something wrong. In other words, she wants to invite him, Faye Dirk, the student council. He said without hesitation that he refused. She was indignant and asked, but why? Didn't he defeat the eldest Bonnet, named Bram, who showed such promise? She said that Faye is the hope of all mages. He still didn't agree and said, it's not like that at all. The protagonist tried to explain that time Bram just wasn't cool. He's too immature, so defeat him. She didn't let him finish and interrupted him saying that she knew it. No one tells the protagonist to do that right now. He was surprised and asked, "What?" Layla said that he was right. If a first year suddenly joined the student council, it wouldn't be very nice to the senior students. So from this year onwards, they decided to create a so-called student organization. He was surprised again and said that he hadn't heard anything like that. Layla happily replied that this morning, she finally got the director's approval. Jessica approved the opening of the student organization. The protagonist was surprised and asked again, "This morning? And what exactly is this organization for?" She corrected him. For whom? After gaining experience for a year, next year he will be able to officially join the ranks of his future comrades. Really perfect. She laughed. Can't wait. Studying for 6 years. Will anything change if he calmly joins the student council next year? She told him that Cecilia joined the student council in her 2nd year, and already in her 3rd year she became vice president. Layla noticed that he was not listening to her and asked, "Is he not interested, huh?" Faye remained silent. She told him that if he joined the student council, perhaps the status of magicians in the school will increase a little. He thought about it, and she continued talking. In other words, perhaps his classmate, Milia Famus, will be bullied less. Perhaps he just wants to express his inner protest now. The protagonist thought if he joined the student council, he will definitely become too close to the Bennett family, starting with Cecilia. He answered her sharply, "No way." She pouted and said how stubborn he is. He has too many shortcomings. He tried to explain to her the reason for his refusal. He no longer wants to get involved with his family. By joining the student organization, no matter how much he wanted to, he wouldn't be able to shield himself from them. The reason she called him here was because she wanted him to meet Cecilia. Why? It really only caused him trouble. She was indignant and asked if he also talked to Cecilia-san like that. Faye thought about it. He sipped tea from a mug and answered, "What's the difference?" Layla was silent for a while, and then said that she needed him anyway. Fine. If he joined, she would take 2 more mages into the organization, whoever he said. Faye asked, "What's the point of that?" Layla explained on her fingers. The maximum number of members in the organization is 6 people. In other words, if there are 3 mages including him, then there are also spiritualists. It will be 3 against 3, so the influence in the student council will be equal. MC scratched his chin and asked, "Okay, can I ask one question?" She said, "Sure." Then the protagonist asked, "Only the strongest ones are in the student council, right? Taking so many mages, it doesn't seem like it can be done that easily." She said, "It's okay. She will insist that 3 seats be given to a mage." The protagonist asked, "Can he choose anyone?" Layla said yes, as long as they have high aptitude for office work. Faye asked another question. "Not all members of the student organization can join the student council, right?" She said it will be decided next year. He closed his eyes. He was very nervous and even sweated a little. Layla clasped her hands in a pleading manner and asked, "Please." The protagonist said, "Okay, he agrees." She happily shouted, "Hooray! In that case, bring 2 more tomorrow after school." Faye was surprised. "What? Tomorrow?" She replied that there was no time to waste. He agreed with this and said that he had to go. Layla saw that he was already leaving the door and asked him to wait. She asked him if he could try talking to Cecilia-san one more time. The protagonist replied, "Layla-san, it's rude to interfere in someone's personal life so much." He returned to his friends. Gaisen was indignant. "This is terrible. There will be a test next week. Non-systemic magic to enchant the body." Iris told him that's exactly why they need to think of a strategy. They were sitting at the table. Milia saw that the protagonist entered the room. She waved her hand and called, "Faye." He was surprised that they had already ordered everything. Milia laughed and said that Faye still can't resist sweets. Iris was surprised. That's how it was. Who would have thought? Faye began to eat his dessert with pleasure. His friends asked him not to eat so fast. That same evening at the Bonnet's house, Bram asked, "What's the matter, Cecilia?" Cecilia turned to Bram and Alice and said that she wanted them to join the student organization at the student council. Alice asked again, "The student organization?" Cecilia explained that after working in this organization for a year, they would be able to get a place in the student council. Of course, not 100%, but they would be able to. Bram was surprised. So that's how it was. In other words, she just wants great staff like him to appear in the student council as soon as possible. But of course, there are some problems for freshmen to join there. That's why they came up with this plan, right? Cecilia got angry at him. She stood up and said that in any case, tomorrow after school she will be waiting for them in the student council office. Okay? Alice awkwardly raised her hand and asked, "Is she sure she will do?" Cecilia looked at her and asked her to be more confident. Then she asked, "She is in the strongest class among the first years, right?" Alice confirmed this. Bram wished his sisters good night and went to bed. In the morning, Gaison and Iris were already up. Iris said, "Well then, let's start training." She asked him to try to release magical power from the center of his body. Black smoke came out of his hands. He asked, "Right?" She got angry at him and said, "Not at all." He was irritated and asked, "How then?" Iris said, that he has absolutely no inner feeling. Gaisen got angry at her and shouted, "How can this be if she only says that? She is no teacher at all." Iris indignantly asked him, what did he say? At that moment, the protagonist and Milia appeared. Faye was surprised at how early his friends were training. Milia said hello, good morning. Gaisen greeted. Faye, Milia, good morning. He said that there was very little time left. The protagonist turned to Milia and suggested that she also train then. He asked what level she had already reached. She became shy and showed, and here it is. Faye was happy and praised her for being able to release magic from 3 fingers. 6 years ago, Milia could only release magic from her thumb. The protagonist supported Milia, of course. She probably trained every day. Yes, the magic power is still a bit cloudy, but the purity is very high. Iris turned to Gaisen and said, yeah, and how many times does he need to explain it to finally get it? Here it is. Here it is. Iris showed her magic from 5 fingers. Faye praised her. The purity of Iris's magic power is still quite low, but she controls it with such ease, and with both hands. MC asked Milia to give him her hands. She held them out and said, okay. He took her hands. Iris was indignant. What were they doing? Gaisen shouted at them that there was no need to flirt here. The protagonist turned to them and said that they had misunderstood. Then he turned to Milia and said that he would gradually release his magical power, allowing it to smoothly flow into Milia. And she should also try to slowly merge into this flow, okay? Milia was happy and said that they often did this before. Do they remember? He confirmed this. The protagonist held her hands and his flow of magical power smoothly flowed into Milia. She closed her eyes. She felt pleased. There was a beautiful glow around her. Iris said, amazing. She had never seen such beautiful magical power. Gaisen confirmed her words and said that he had also never seen such sensual power before. The protagonist transferred the power to her and let go of her hands. Milia looked at her hands. Faye's magical power is amazing. It flows at a constant speed. She decided to direct her power along the path of his magic power. Faye opened his mouth in surprise. Beautiful magic power emanated from Milia's hand. It emanated from all 5 fingers. She was delighted and screamed, it worked. She did it. The protagonist praised her and said that she was smart. If this continues, then in a week she will be able to use magic to enchant the body. She happily agreed with him. Gaisen was upset that he did not succeed and said that he wanted to sleep. Iris remembered, exactly. Gaisen came even before her. She asked if he was okay. He answered that he should not be underestimated. He has a countermeasure. Iris asked, and what was it? He answered, sleep during lessons. That is more than enough for him. Iris said that all he does is sleep all the time. Gaisen laughed and answered that he can easily understand Aaron's lessons even in his sleep. Suddenly Aaron's voice was heard. Is that so? Gaisen started to sweat in surprise. The teacher asked him, so he should definitely get a perfect score on the next test, right? Gaisen got scared and said, I think it's time for him to go back to class. He wanted to sneak away, but Aaron caught him. Stop. The teacher warned Gaisen, if he doesn't get a perfect score on the next test, he will give him a special extra lesson after class. Gaisen looked scared and stuttered. He would consider it an honor. After class, Gaisen suggested to Faye that they go get something to eat. The protagonist replied that he needed to stop somewhere else. He suggested that they go first, okay? They agreed and left. He went to the student council. Layla should be waiting for him there. He stood in front of the door and thought, even though she told him to take 2, he was still alone. Right, it was lunchtime. She was probably not there. He knocked on the door and opened the door. The door was unlocked. He saw Layla. She said that he was late. He asked if she knew he was coming. Layla confirmed his guess, of course. She gave him a book with a list of students and said, he came to see this, didn't he? The protagonist confirmed yes, he really wanted to see it. Layla laughed and asked, is it really possible to choose someone if you yourself have only just entered the school? Faye asked her a counter question. If she herself understands this, then why is she forcing him to choose? She was glad that he took this question seriously and asked if she could say something. He could have chosen someone from his classmates. Hadn't he thought about it? The protagonist disagreed with her and answered that he had only just entered, so he hadn't quite figured out who was who yet. Layla said that he was always too serious in rather strange places. But if he only started looking at the list now, he would hardly make it in time for the end of classes. She offered to help him. Maybe then she would make a choice? He was surprised by the offer. Layla confirmed and said that most of the information about the students was stored in her head. She asked him not to worry. She would not choose anyone who would be at a disadvantage to the spiritualists. He told her, in that case, could he ask her to make the choice? She happily agreed, of course. Layla said, lunch is not over yet. How about having lunch together? Faye refused. No way. He prefers to have lunch in a pleasant environment, so he would rather refuse. He slipped out the door and said he was leaving. She told him, see you after school. At this time in the cafeteria, Bram was pestering everyone. The guy asked what he was doing. He told him to shut up and asked where Faye was. Cecilia tried to calm him down. Bram, brother, stop it. He told her to shut up. Bram grabbed Geisen by the collar and shook him. Iris asked, "What's wrong with this guy?" Just then the protagonist came up and asked, "What happened?" Melia was happy to see him. "Huh, Faye." Geisen also saw him and called out, "Faye," and asked him to do something about this guy already. Bram was indignant about this guy. What kind of disdain is this? He said that he was from a family of the most influential. But before he could finish speaking, one of the guys interrupted him and said that everyone was already tired of listening to this. The protagonist turned to Bram and asked, "What's the matter?" "He's a spiritualist. Maybe he'll manifest his spirit?" Bram answered, "Easily." The protagonist sat with his back to him, looking bored, and asked, "What's the matter then? You're really getting on my nerves." Bram laughed and said, "This is the perfect time to say it." Actually, he joined the student council. The protagonist chuckled. For him, this doesn't really interest him at all. Bram didn't let up and said that in fact, for now it was a student organization under the student council, but it was created especially for him so that he could officially join it. The protagonist said absolutely indifferently, "So that's how it is." Bram said that the members of this organization can decide for themselves when to release a spirit or anything else. In other words, no matter what Faye did, nothing would happen to him for it. The protagonist answered him, "Of course it would, actually. In the worst case, they could very well strip him of qualifications. Besides, he had already had a similar problem before, hadn't he?" Bram was very angry. Cecilia turned him around and said, "Bram, brother, that's enough." As he was leaving, he said, "Okay, he won't do anything to the protagonist today, but tomorrow." They left. Faye thought, it seems that Bram hasn't fully recovered yet. Well, that means he will join too after all. He's starting to like this idea less and less. The king gathered the council. He was deciding on the punishment of the Bonnet family. The first advisor said, even if he is one of the 7, it is simply impossible to turn a blind eye to such a thing. The second said, but if he is punished severely, then a rebellion may arise. The third said, no, on the contrary, if the punishment is too weak, they may think that His Majesty is afraid. Moreover, His Majesty will no longer be respected. His reputation will be completely ruined. The 3 of them turned to His Majesty and asked what his orders would be regarding the Bonnet family. At this time at school, Melia turned to Faye. She wanted to say something, but he interrupted her. He said that he still needed to go somewhere. It would take some time. He suggested that she return first and gave her the keys. Okay. She was surprised. What? There was no need to worry about her. She would wait for him as long as necessary. He explained to her that there was no need to wait. He was afraid that this would drag on for a long time, no matter how much he wanted to end it quickly. He can't keep her waiting that long. After a while, the protagonist knocked on Layla's door. He thought, this Bram, he'll definitely cause trouble. From behind the door came the voice, come in. He entered. There were 4 people sitting in the office. Layla said that they were all waiting for Faye. He was surprised and asked if he was late. She winked at him and answered, no. She was just waiting for him impatiently. Cecilia addressed him formally by the name Faye Dirk. She asked to allow him to introduce 2 mages, carefully selected by the president. The first mage was a guy. He introduced himself. His name is Graham Nielsen, a 2nd year. Nice to meet you. The second mage was a girl. She introduced herself. Her name is Celia Riley. She is also a 2nd year. She was pleased to meet MC. The protagonist also introduced himself. He said his name is Faye Dirk. He said that he was also very pleased. The guy replied that they knew who he was. The protagonist was surprised. Where from? Graham said they saw that conflict. Who would have thought they would be able to see a mage defeat a spiritualist? Celia said that she got goosebumps from excitement. Faye understood what they were talking about. Celia said that besides, they are from Bonnet territory. Faye asked again what she meant. Graham answered, in general, they understand the situation, but they are forbidden to tell anything. So the protagonist does not have to worry that they will tell anyone anything. MC thanked them for this. He thought, they are forbidden to talk. There are practically no people who really just will not tell anyone, I guess. Layla said, anyway, Bram and the others are late. Graham was indignant. What? Bram will also join this organization? Layla confirmed it. The protagonist thought in surprise. Graham called the son of a high-ranking official so familiarly. Is this normal? The protagonist did not know the answer to this question. Graham turned to Layla. Does she even know what Bram did? She answered, other students and teachers highly recommended him. That's why. In the student council, the main role is played by real magical abilities. So Bram will not be able to make any claims here. Graham said that they are magicians. He always acutely feels this difference between magicians and spiritualists. What, if now it is possible? Faye is their only hope. Graham turned to the protagonist and asked that if something happens, then Faye must definitely tell him about it. Even if the protagonist thinks that nothing can be done about it, Graham will definitely think of something. Celia confirmed and said that she did too. Faye was surprised. He thanked the guys for this. The door to the office opened slightly, and someone modestly apologized and said that she was a little late. Then the door opened wider and a girl timidly entered the office. She said it was nice to meet you. Her name was Eunice. Eunice Sensa, second year. MC looked at her and thought all three of them were here, Graham, Celia, and him, all mages. So this girl was a spirit mage. The girl bowed to them and said it was nice to meet them. The protagonist introduced himself. His name was Faye Dirk. Graham and Celia also introduced themselves in turn. Faye looked at Eunice and thought, this girl, she doesn't look down on mages. Sort of. She noticed him looking at her and asked, is something wrong? The protagonist replied, no, everything is fine. A voice was heard from behind the door, which said that they were coming in. Bram kicked the door and entered. He apologized for that and exclaimed, oh, the president is already here. The girl entered with him and modestly apologized. It was Alice. Bram was very surprised when he saw Faye and asked, why is he here too? Alice saw Faye and greeted him. Little brother Faye. She asked him if he was also in the student council. The protagonist replied, "Pop that," but he was no longer her little brother. Bram cursed and was indignant. The protagonist was just a mage. Layla said, "Oh, didn't she tell you?" She told him that there would also be 3 mages in the student organization. Bram screamed. Mages? He was totally against it. Why would the strongest organizations need these small fish? Graham jumped up and asked what he said. Layla didn't expect such words. She asked, "What? Small fish?" In that case, he was the loser to one of these small fish. Bram began to justify himself. He said that he was simply caught off guard. The protagonist calmly told him, even if, according to him, he was caught off guard, this was his real level. Bram screamed that he was still against it. He swung his fist at the protagonist. Faye was very surprised and did not expect it. Graham managed to intercept Bram's hand. Bram asked who he was anyway, and demanded to let go of his hand. Graham did not agree and said, "No way." He said that he could not just silently watch his Kohai being beaten. Bram was surprised. Kohai. He asked Graham, "Is he also a mage?" Graham said with a mocking grin, "And this is the right answer." Bram screamed that it hurt. Faye thanked Graham for his help. Graham told him not to worry. Alice approached Bram and asked if he was okay. He rudely told her to shut up. Graham tried to scold Bram and said that it was impossible to behave like that towards an older brother. Bram screamed that for him he was just an outsider. Graham said how he hated people like him. Graham promised that if Bram touched the protagonist with even a finger, he would definitely not forgive him. Faye was surprised by such intercession. Bram shouted that this was only Bonnet's problem, and demanded that Graham not interfere. Graham replied that this outsider, as he had cut out a second ago, had defeated him. Bram shouted, "Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!" He became furious. A magical fire flared up around him. Layla intervened and used her magic to calm Bram. She said that she would not allow such stupidity again. Bram began to apologize. He said that he had lost his composure. He turned to the president and said that he had heard that this school had a tradition of students fighting in a duel. He asked for permission to duel Faye. Layla confirmed that such duels were indeed often held before. Bram had said so. The president asked the protagonist what he thought about it. He didn't expect it and was surprised. What? Bram said that next time, Faye will definitely lose, and asked him if he is already shaking with fear. MC agreed without thinking twice. Layla said, "In that case, we need to meet in the practice room." Bram and Alice were leaving. As he was leaving, he threatened Faye again and said that next time, he would definitely show him, and that the protagonist should not even think about running away. Cecilia was disappointed with her brother's behavior. Graham turned to the president. Would she seriously allow Bram to join the student council? Layla replied that this was just how he was now. Graham was indignant, but why? The president said that the others had hardly seen this side of him. He asked again, what did she mean? Layla replied, Bram is quite strong, but he does not go against people above him. However, he completely loses control in front of Faye. That is why she wants both of them to be within her reach. No one says that they are obliged to join the student council from next year. The protagonist was surprised and asked if that was why she was so desperate to ask him to agree. Layla confirmed this, although she knows it's not very nice to the protagonist. But she thought it would help to remove Bonnet's darkness little by little. The protagonist admired her. Layla-san thought about it. He thought she was just a girl in good shape. Layla stopped his thoughts and said that he was clearly thinking about something indecent right now. They all went their separate ways. The protagonist went to class. He wondered if Melia was still waiting for him. He looked in. She was sitting there, and when she saw him, she greeted him. She was waiting after all. Melia asked him if he had settled his business. He replied that he hadn't yet. He looked upset. Melia saw this and asked if something was wrong. MC replied that he needed a little more time. He suggested that she go back first, okay? She said that there was no point in going back to the auditorium again. He agreed with that, so he told her to go first. Melia was insistent and said that she would go with him. He agreed. They went together. After a while, the practice room. When they entered, Bram was already there and wanted to scratch his fists on Geisen. Gaison was happy to see the protagonist. MC asked Iris and Gaison why they were both here. They answered because they were training with enchanting the body. And why are they here? The protagonist hesitated. He did not know how to say it, but Layla answered for him. Now there will be a duel here, so they need this audience. Gaison asked again, a duel? She confirmed it and said that the duel will be between Faye and Bram. Gaison could not believe it and asked, hey, what are you doing? What other duel? She answered, well, a regular one. He asked again, a regular one? Layla confirmed and said, in any case, they are taking up this audience. Gaison was very surprised. The protagonist apologized for interrupting their training. Gaison reassured him it was okay. Layla summed it up and said, well, they'll check the safety of the place for now. She said, so, the duel continues until one of them admits defeat, or until she decides that the duel can't continue. You can use recovery magic, but they are responsible for every injury, so they should try to act moderately. Bram was surprised. Responsible for every injury? Layla said, so, let's begin. Bram shouted that the first victory was his, and he used fireball magic. Faye used enchant body. Gaison said that Faye's magic is wonderful. Milia said that it was Faye. He was surprised and asked her, isn't she worried? Milia answered, Faye simply cannot lose. Bram stood with his hands on his hips and said, after all, low-level magic does not work on the protagonist. Faye replied that Bram wouldn't be able to defeat him unless he used at least top-tier magic. Bram was delighted. Top-tier magic, you say? And this is top-tier magic? He used top-tier fire magic, Flame Wave, and directed that power at Faye. The protagonist was very surprised, no preparatory movement. Moreover, without even chanting, to defend himself, he summoned water net magic. Fire and water converged. Gaison was delighted. Wow, what steam. Milia was a little scared for him. Faye defended himself and cursed. Suddenly, the water and flame dissipated. Bram and Faye were standing on their feet. Faye asked, is it a tie? Bram laughed and said, no way, it's not over yet, and directed his power at MC. The protagonist was surprised and again top-tier magic without any warning signs. Layla was also surprised and said, even the student council staff finds it difficult to use magic without chanting. Moreover, high-level magic, it's simply impossible. Gaison was scared. Seriously? Layla said that it might not be possible to cope with someone like Faye. The protagonist used water net. Bram directed even more magic at him. The protagonist used water wall magic. Bram directed a sudden fire spear at Faye. Faye wondered, did he think he would panic? No way. It's very strange, considering that there were absolutely no prerequisites for using advanced magic wave of flame. After all, before using the fire spear, intermediate magic, there were warning signs. Bram stood as if nothing had happened. The protagonist was perplexed. Why is that? In addition to basic magic and already twice high-level magic, he also uses spirit magic. But Bram doesn't look tired at all. Faye had a guess. Really? The protagonist used water net again and directed it at Bram. Bram screamed for Faye to die, and directed all his power at him. The audience was scared. Faye understood everything, so that's how it is. Good. Water net, wind flow. These two magics combined and the protagonist directed it at Bram. Bram was scared. He was thrown far to the side. Gaison screamed, holy shit. Bram cursed while flying. Cecilia whispered, a magician who makes you shiver. Bram was lying on the floor. The protagonist approached him and asked, this is the Arn crystal, right? The Arn crystal is a rare precious crystal that has the ability to store magic. By using even the simplest magic, the magical power stored in it will be released, giving the owner of the crystal powerful strength. Since this crystal is very rare, only the royal family or the aristocrats closest to it can own it. Bram rose to his feet and asked, so what? Is it written somewhere that you can't use it in duels? MC asked him if he didn't want to fight with his own strength. Bram asked again, strength? Financial power, that's his strength. Authority, money, intelligence, abilities, that's all his real strength. Faye asked him if he could ask him something. Bram was surprised. What did he want? The protagonist asked, this magic stored in the crystal, whose is it? Bram smiled arrogantly and answered, his father. The fairy's entire childhood flashed before their eyes in an instant. He asked, so by surpassing the magic of the Arn crystal, he would be able to defeat his father? A feeling came over him that he had to get rid of, but it was sitting somewhere deep in his chest. What he tried his best to forget, and even sincerely believed that he could forget. But this bitterness is stronger than him. Them who threw him away, the parents who tried to kill him, he will destroy them all. For him to give up the opportunity to make them crawl on their knees, never. Faye said, let's end this quickly. Show me the power of this man. Bram got angry and said, there's no need to pretend to be tough. Fire net, pincers. But that's not all. He prepared a fire arrow. Gaison and Melia were scared for Faye. The protagonist remembered how his father kicked him out of the house. Get out! Don't you dare cross the threshold of the Bonnet family again. Faye prepared his magic to repel Bram's attack. Defeating the magical power of the Arun crystal is the same as defeating his father. Faye decided that he would destroy him. Destroy him completely, he shouted. Disappear already. Wind whirlwind. The clash of the two elements began. Brahm released a fire arrow, but it did not help him. The spectators stood with their mouths open. Brahm was thrown aside, breaking a huge hole in the wall. Layla said that the protagonist destroyed the wall again. How defiant. Faye replied, well, if it would confirm his victory, why not? Layla said his victory here was obvious to everyone. Faye asked Layla, so what about the mages? Does everything still stand? She replied, of course, he won. Brahm indignantly said, not yet. He hasn't lost yet. Layla replied that it looked pathetic. Brahm cursed, damn it. Why does he always lose to Faye? Always. Brahm asked, why is Faye always ahead? The protagonist tried to calm him down, but to no avail. Brahm continued to shout that he couldn't lose to someone like MC, someone who was just lucky enough to be born with talent. It would have been better if Faye had been killed that day. Alice shouted, that's not true. She turned to Brahm and said, he probably doesn't know, but little brother Faye trained hard every day from morning until late at night, every day. Constantly. You can't call that just talent. Tears were streaming from her eyes. The protagonist was surprised that she was defending him. He looked at the destruction and asked the president, what about the wall? She said that he didn't need to worry about it. She will ask to have it repaired. He thanked her. Faye took Milia's hand and said that they should go. She agreed. Geisen asked him to wait. The protagonist apologized to him and said that he was very tired. He said goodbye to everyone until tomorrow. Faye pulled Milia's hand. She asked him to wait. He was surprised. What happened? She answered, nothing, just a hand. He asked again, a hand? He saw that he was squeezing it with force and pulling it along. Faye got scared and let go of her hand, apologizing. She looked at him dejectedly. He apologized again. Really, I'm sorry. He said that he did it unconsciously. She told him that it was nothing serious. The protagonist asked, she must be very tired today, right? He said that first she needed to take a bath. Now he would draw it for her. She was surprised by his behavior. Faye went into the bath and turned on the water there. She undressed, and he went into the room and sat on the bed. He fell face down on the pillow and decided that Milia probably thought he was weird. What was he even doing? He wondered, really, what was he doing? He had used magic, letting anger and hatred control him. After all, he hadn't matured at all since then. In the end, he was no different from Brahm. He remembered how Alice had protected him. No, that wasn't true. He knew that Alice couldn't hate him. After all, it was they, Bonnet, who had kicked out Faye. The protagonist grabbed his head and remembered the gift from his sister. He remembered the orb that was always with him, and now it was lying on the shelf. The next morning, they all met in class. Geisen stretched and said that he was very tired. Iris said that now he had learned to use body enchantment. She asked if he could increase the purity of his magical power. Geisen replied that quantity was more important to him than quality. Iris was indignant. He couldn't compete with just that. At that moment, Faye and Milia came up. They said hello, good morning. Iris said indignantly that they were late. She asked not to leave her alone with this guy since this morning. Geisen was indignant at her words. Hey, with what other guy? What other guy is this? Faye looked at them and smiled. Geisen asked, let's finally continue. Faye turned to him. Geisen? Geisen asked, what is something wrong? Faye said, about yesterday. Doesn't he want to ask anything? Geisen was surprised. Why? Or does the protagonist want him to ask? MC answered, no. Geisen said, in that case, wouldn't it be better to leave everything as is? The protagonist was surprised. What? Geisen said, of course, he is terribly curious, but it seems too difficult. Instead of forcibly asking and hearing in response not quite the truth, it is 10 times better to just leave everything as is. Milia asked Faye, isn't it time to go already? The protagonist confirmed, sure, let's go. Geisen said, let's go. Iris looked at him and said, sometimes he says really nice things. Geisen chuckled and asked, what was she talking about? He's a really nice guy. Everyone found it funny that he was praising himself. Iris thought he was stupid. The lesson began. All the students were sitting in their seats. Geisen sat and convinced himself not to sleep. He didn't want any extra lessons. He needed to focus all his magic power on his eyes. The teacher watched Geisen getting sleepy and thought, maybe it was time to prepare manuals for the extra lessons? Aaron asked if he could ask Faye. Geisen was already asleep with his head on the desk. The protagonist confirmed. Aaron apologized and asked if he could watch Geisen's training in his free time. The protagonist was surprised. Why him? Aaron answered that he knew the protagonist had enough to do, but Geisen did not change at all during his classes. So the teacher thought that maybe if Faye had a serious talk with him, he would listen to him. For mages, studying is very important. Aaron asked if the protagonist could do this for Geisen. The lessons had long since ended. Geisen was still sleeping. Faye waited and thought, and how soon would he wake up? Suddenly the door opened, and the director asked if Faye Jerk could come in for a minute. The protagonist was surprised. Director. She handed him a letter and said that she had an important conversation with him. Therefore, she asked him to follow her. He took it. At this time in the Bonnet mansion, Alex Bonnet demanded an explanation from Brahm. The entire Bonnet family was present at the conversation. Bram said that having learned that Faye would also join the student organization, he could not leave it like that and challenged him to a duel. And lost. Adi Bonet asked, lost to a simple fool? Wasn't Faye just imitating someone stronger? Alice said, little brother Faye fought fairly, he didn't deceive anyone. Father looked at her sternly. She asked, what? He sternly told Alice, her brother Faye is dead. He is a stranger. Don't even call him your brother by mistake. She was scared. Then Alex turned to Bram and asked why he lost. Bram hesitated and said that it was not so. He knew that he would be fighting a simple magician, therefore he could not show his full strength. The girls looked at him with disdain. Alex demanded that Bram tell him the truth. Bram answered that he was not lying. Father asked, what happened to the Aran crystal? Bram said that he used it for magical research. The parents did not believe him. Alex turned to Alice and asked her to tell what happened. Alice narrated, little brother Bram used the Aran crystal and spirit magic, but Faye was stronger and Bram lost. Alex sternly asked Bram, was everything as Alice said? Bram remained silent. There was a knock on the door. Alex said that he could come in. Armand entered the room and apologized. Alex asked, what was the matter? Armand answered, the decree of His Majesty the King had arrived. Alex was surprised. What? Armand handed him a letter. The letter said the following people, 10 days later, exactly at noon, must arrive at the royal castle of the Kingdom of Armando. Alex Bonnet, Adi Bonnet, Alice Bonnet, Cecilia Bonnet, Bram Bonnet, Armand Boswell, and the signature, the King of the Kingdom of Armando, Alfred Armando. Alex angrily crumpled the letter and said angrily, and this at a time when Faye. He did not finish the sentence. He thought that on that day, he had to kill the protagonist with his own hands. At the same time, in the director's office, Faye was reading the letter from the king. Faye Bonnet, 10 days from now, at exactly noon, you must arrive at the royal castle of the Kingdom of Armando. And signed, the King of the Kingdom of Armando, Alfred Armando. Faye was surprised by this turn of events. He thought, this is the day. The director handed over a large box with a beautiful suit in it. She said, here you go. This is official clothing. Doesn't MC have one? Faye was embarrassed and began to refuse, saying that this was not right. The director clarified, does that mean he has a suit? Faye replied that he does not have a suit. She explained that he cannot go to the royal capital dressed like this, and asked him not to worry, it was a gift. MC thanked her for the gift and thought about how many years had passed since he last wore a formal suit. The director continued, so in 9 days a carriage will arrive at the main gate for him. Faye clarified, isn't it in 10 days? The principal smiled and said that it was half a day's drive from here to the royal capital. Somewhere in the forest near the house, Lana was hanging out laundry. She felt something. A light breeze blew. Lana looked back. A leaf from a tree flew to her hand and she realized that the day had come. Her Faye was going to the royal castle. How could she help her sweet son? In the school dormitory, Amelia was happy how handsome Faye was in a suit. She said that something was missing. MC thought about it. Amelia said how could he go without a tie? She gently tied the tie around his neck, and then she gently looked into Faye's eyes. She came to her senses, jumped aside, and apologized 3 times. MC said that it was okay and asked if she could look after his room while he was gone for a few days. He invited her to make herself at home. Amelia asked if Faye was okay, because coming to the royal capital means meeting the Bonnet family there. MC smiled and asked her not to worry. In the morning at the school gate, Amelia said that she had to go to class. Faye said, see you soon. Amelia was worried about how the meeting with MC's parents would go. She wished him good luck. Faye smiled and walked down the road. The students were walking towards the school, and MC was heading in the opposite direction. He was walking towards the carriage that was waiting for him. A tall young man with glasses and a funny girl in an apron were standing by the carriage. They greeted MC politely and said that they had been waiting for him. Faye was surprised that he was called Faye Bonnet. The young man introduced himself as Trent Mendez, the royal butler. Very pleased to meet you. The girl was so nervous that she kept forgetting her words. She said that she was a maid, Anna Mendez. That's it. MC was surprised that they had the same last name. Does that mean they are? Trent replied that it was correct. They were brother and sister. He wondered about the fact that they didn't look alike at all, right? They weren't related by blood. He told MC that since Anna was still young, this trip might leave a strong impression on her and asked to be more lenient with her, please. They all got into the carriage and set off. Faye said that His Majesty invited him to the royal capital, although he might not be who he thinks. Trent replied that there was no need to worry. When they arrived at the castle, there would be a check to see if he was the one or not. Faye was surprised. A check? Trent explained that he did not know if Mr. Faye remembered visiting the royal castle before. Faye asked, before, was it when the court mage wanted to study his magic power? Trent replied, that is right, that Aran crystal with Mr. Faye's magic power is still kept in the royal palace. MC thought about it. In case the iron crystal, which already contains magic power, and another person who tries to add theirs, the two forces inside the crystal will repel each other. But if it is Faye who uses the magic power on the Aruna crystal, it will not be reflected because it is already stored in it. Anna fell asleep and MC replied no problem, he was tired too. Faye remembered his first visit to the palace. A cute girl with blonde hair and a big bow on her head asked if Faye would do it again. MC replied that it was an order from Her Imperial Majesty Princess Latisse. She shook her finger at him and said, "Stop this super formal tone." Asked him to call her just Latisse. MC resisted. He could not discard Her Highness, it was too much. The princess insisted and said that everything was fine. MC doubted. Then the princess said that it was an order. If he did not carry it out, her father would arrest him for insulting. Faye was surprised. What kind of stupidity? At his own risk, he called the princess Latisse. She was delighted and said, "So far it is not as smooth as she would like, but this time she forgives him." Latisse shouted, "In that case, come on, do it quickly." MC agreed and created a water ball. Many water balls flew up. The princess was happy. A lot of bubbles flew in the air. This created a multicolored rainbow in the sky. Latisse said that Faye's magic is beautiful. It is really amazing. Faye thanked the princess. Latisse asked him to teach her magic. Faye said that he can't do it now because he is leaving the castle today. The princess asked when he will come again. Faye said that he will need to report after making a contract with the spirit, probably at this time. So in 10 days, Latisse said that this is a promise. If he breaks it, he will have to fulfill one of her wishes. MC did not understand why she was asking him about this. After all, the court magician teaches much better. The princess said that she wanted to be him. They agreed. At that moment, a young man with blonde hair came up and said, "There you are." Latisse was happy when she saw her brother. She said that Faye promised to teach her magic. MC greeted the prince. The prince apologized to Faye for the trouble his sister had caused him. By the way, Faye's father was looking for him. It was time for them to leave. MC thanked him for the information. The princess shouted goodbye so that Faye would not forget about his promise. MC promised. Time passed. Trent told the master that they had arrived. The royal capital of Armando appeared on the horizon. Faye looked out the carriage window and said, it was still crowded. People looked at the carriage and said, it was His Majesty's visitor. MC decided that he was too conspicuous. Trent calmed him down and said it was just the royal carriage. Someone said that this carriage was still beautiful. The carriage drove into the castle gate. Trent invited Faye to follow him. He was led into a large room with soft sofas. Anna brought a cup of tea, but out of excitement, the cup began to fall from the tray right on MC. Trent noticed this, and with the help of magic did not allow the cup to tip over. He apologized to Faye. MC said, "It's okay." Anna thanked her brother for his help. The door opened, and a cute girl with a big bow in her hair entered the room. Faye recognized it as Princess Letty and the prince. There were tears in her eyes. She threw herself on his neck, saying that she missed him very much. MC stood in complete confusion. Prince said that he understood that they wanted to enjoy the meeting after a long separation, but before that, they needed to resolve one issue regarding the iron crystal. MC agreed. Trent brought the crystal on a pillow and handed it to the protagonist. Faye stretched out his hand and directed the magic power towards the crystal. The whole room was illuminated by the light from the magic power. The princess said, "The crystal resonates amazingly." The prince added that they all witnessed, without a doubt, it was Faye Bonnet. Latisse was delighted. She said, of course it was Faye. He couldn't be killed so easily by a demon. After this procedure, Trent went to take Faye to his room. He said that today was a hard day, so he needed to get a good rest. They walked along a long corridor with beautiful vases as the Bonnet family came out of one room. Faye met his father's gaze, and in his head at that moment, a memory of the last day they saw each other flashed. Faye was the first to say, "Long time no see, Sir Alex." Alex asked, "Who is this?" "He is too busy a man to remember every commoner." Faye grinned, "Is that so? And about the fact that this commoner is your son and how you treated him, you have not heard anything?" Alex was indignant. How dare he? The Bonnet family turned around and left. MC thought, well, then he was a commoner. Remembering that day, deep down, Faye hoped that his father was at least a little sorry. Apparently, he overestimated his humanity. There would be no mercy now. Frightened Anna asked if Faye was okay. MC asked her not to worry. Trent and Anna bowed and said that Faye was very tired today. They showed him to his room and wished him a good rest. Closing the door of the room, Faye wished good night. Anna was worried and hoped that Faye was okay. Trent said that MC was only 13 years old, but how much grief he had to endure. He hoped that nothing like this would happen tomorrow. In his room, Faye was sitting on his bed and could not sleep. He went out for a walk and remembered that this had happened to him before, 8 years ago. The day when he first stayed at the royal castle, he couldn't sleep and went out into the garden to get some fresh air. At the fountain, he saw Lettuce with a bow in a night dress. She was looking at the stars and shivering from the cold. MC came up and covered her shoulders with his jacket. The princess turned around in surprise and said sternly, "How dare he touch her?" Faye knelt down, apologized, and said that his name was Faye Bonnet. He was the son of Duke Bonnet. The princess asked why he was here at such a time. Faye replied that he was ashamed to admit it, but it was his first time spending the night in the royal castle, and he couldn't sleep. He just walked wherever his eyes looked, and then bumped into Her Highness. The princess laughed. They sat down on the step and started chatting. MC asked what the princess was doing there. She replied that she just wanted to clear her head a little. The same thing happens every day in her life. The courtiers say that she is infinitely beautiful today, asking you to take care of them. It seems silly to her. But when she looks at the night sky here, she forgets about all these things. Faye said that he understood her feelings a little. He is the eldest son of the Duke, so many nobles try to curry favor with him. They both unconsciously noticed that all the praise addressed to them was actually just to take advantage of their position. The princess asked if he always felt this way too. Faye answered, "Yes, I guess." He always felt the pressure from others when they called him a prodigy. The princess asked if there was anything Faye would like to do. MC asked again, what did he want to do? The princess smiled and said, what would he like to do himself? Faye thought about it and said, to live up to his parents' expectations, probably. The princess was surprised. Is that so? And then she stood up and said that she would like to go for a walk with her favorite boy, just the two of them. Faye was surprised. So that's what you would like, Your Highness? It seems simple, but it is actually very difficult. The princess said that she was cold. Faye used magic power and created fire. The princess said, it is so warm, so it is magic. MC was surprised that the princess saw magic for the first time. She answered no, but she saw it only from afar. The princess asked to tell what Faye wanted to do with her. She clarified the question. What would he want to become for her? Faye answered that he wanted to be friends with her. He hoped that she would support him in the future. The princess laughed and said, how funny Faye is. She said, okay, let's build a friendly relationship with you. These were memories from 8 years ago. Since then, MC's surroundings have completely changed, but he himself has not changed at all. Out of insomnia, he went wandering around the castle, just like 8 years ago. He went out into the garden, where Princess Lettice was standing by the fountain. Their eyes met. The princess said that he came here after all. Faye said, Your Royal Majesty read his thoughts in advance. He was very embarrassed. The princess smiled and said, finally they can talk in peace. The protagonist spoke, but there is not much to say. Lettice frowned and shouted, there is a lot to talk about. After all, 6 years have passed. MC was surprised and said, even if you ask him about something, he will not tell you much. After all these 6 years he lived in the forest with the woman who saved his life. Lettice asked again, 6 whole years in the forest with that woman. In the forest, you lived only the two of you. MC was surprised. Well, yes. The princess sternly asked, what kind of relationship did Faye have with that woman? MC did not understand the question and asked again, in what sense? She is his mother. Lettice smiled happily and said, so that's how it is. Then great, and asked to forget about her question. She had several things she wanted to talk about, including his promise. She turned to MC and looked questioningly. She wanted to talk about his family. Originally, family should be the most important ally in everyone's life at all times. That day 6 years ago, she doesn't know the details of what happened in the Bonnet family, but MC interrupted her and said that it's okay. Even if he doesn't have any blood relatives, he has someone he can call his family. That's Lana-san. He doesn't know how long they will be family. Princess took his hands. Faye was speechless. Lettice said no matter what happens, she will always be by his side. Someday she will show what a real family is. Their faces were so close to each other, but the princess felt shy and stepped aside. Faye came over and gently hugged her shoulders and said, thank you. At the same time, in Alex's room, there was a conversation about how dare this boy threaten the status of the Bonnet family. Adie was angry and said that she hated Faye. Only Cecilia and Alice silently looked at their parents. In the morning, Faye woke up and said good morning to Melly out of habit, but there was no one nearby. He felt a strange feeling that Melly always slept nearby. It became so natural. A question was heard behind the door. Was Faye already awake? MC opened the door, and Anna was standing there. He wished her good morning. Anna asked how about breakfast? MC agreed. Faye was sitting at the set table, and Trent was standing next to him. He wondered what Mr. Faye would do after breakfast. Anna was carrying tea to MC and was worried that there were about 3 hours left before the audience. Faye asked if it was possible to leave the castle for a while. Trent apologized and asked if MC could please spend this time in the castle. Faye asked if there was a place in the castle where it was allowed to use magic. Anna, hearing about magic, almost fell, along with a tray in her hands. Trent said that he would see the protagonist off after breakfast. The tea tray flew out of Anna's hands and fell. Trent politely led MC to the second training room. Here, you can safely use magic. Faye thanked Trent. Trent bowed and said that in that case, he was leaving and wished him a good rest. Faye stood in the middle of a large empty room. He concentrated on his power and enchanted the body. Trent was surprised that MC could use non-systemic magic to enchant the body without singing. What would happen if MC fought Alex? Faye thought about what magic to use at what time. He did not want it to be like in the fight with Brahm. It was nonsense. After all, he was unable to control the power from the 5 spirits, so he sealed them. But he could rely on this power when it was convenient for him. For him, it was a great test. At that moment, the door opened and Latisse entered the room. He greeted her and asked why she was here. The princess became embarrassed and said that she was here by accident. She asked about MC practicing magic. Faye replied that he just had free time. Latisse asked if something was wrong and asked if MC would do this. Faye clarified that and remembered how he had entertained the princess in the garden with bubbles a long time ago. He asked if she could not do it herself. Latisse was offended that Faye did not remember. The protagonist said that this was basic magic. Could the princess not do it? She puffed out her cheeks like a little girl and called MC names. She was offended and left. Faye did not understand why. Could she really not use magic? But it was simply impossible. The court magician had to teach the princess this. Then why is that? Anna ran up and called Faye. She said that it was time so she would straighten his tie. Faye said that this did not need to be done. He would straighten everything himself. Anna asked that MC was afraid that she would not cope. The protagonist answered no and allowed her to do it. He sat down on purpose so that it would be more comfortable for her. Anna straightened his tie and muttered under her breath, "This probably needs to be inserted into this hole." "No, not here. Tighten it again." She said that she succeeded. MC thanked her for her efforts. Anna said that she forgot about the perfume and quickly ran away. Trent came up and apologized for Anna. He adjusted the tie correctly. Faye said, "It's okay." Anna came running. She was holding a bottle in her hands and said that she brought it. Trent told her that she brought vegetable oil. How can you confuse perfume and oil? He suggested that they look together. Anna politely asked him to wait for her a little longer. Faye looked at them and did not understand how they were so different, but they were brother and sister, 5 heroes who once achieved great achievements in the war with demons. The 5 great ones, having received the status of dukes, became one of the 7 most influential families of Armando. But besides them, there were also those who did not have any special military merits before the kingdom. 2 houses that provided the 5 heroes with great material and technical assistance, for which they were also awarded the title of duke. And of these 2 families, one was not quite ordinary. The Dirkzerk family, a unique house among the aristocrats, having in addition to the status of one of the 7 great ones, another title after the end of the war with demons. The king told them then, "Great job. They are the heroes who saved this country." The king awards each of them the status of duke, and they can ask him for anything. They thanked the king and said that they were happy. They said that they would like to receive land. All of them, as one, wanted to receive a huge plot of land. However, the king looked at them and asked, "What does Dirkzerk want to receive? The same as everyone else. Land?" She answered, "No, she does not need land." The king asked, "Then what does she want to receive?" She said that all she wants is to live quietly and peacefully with her little daughter who has lost her father. She needs a small plot of forest and a small house. She doesn't need anything else. The king was intrigued and said, "Interesting, no status, no money, no honor." He would like to talk to her again later. Since then, once a year she came to the castle to have an audience with the king. Only the king and the most influential people in the country know Dirkzerk by sight, as well as some of the 7 officials who participated in the war. 10 years ago, she died. After her mother's death, the girl took over the management of the house. She lived in her house in the forest all alone, until one day she met a little boy there. It was Faye Bonnet. Faye was sitting in front of the king's audience. A servant called him by name and said, "His Majesty the King summons you." The protagonist's heart was beating wildly. The servant asked, "Lord Faye, is your heart ready?" Faye was too excited to answer. The servant led him to the door and loudly announced, "Lord Faye has arrived." From behind the door came the cry, "Let him come in." Faye entered the hall. The entire Bonnet family was already there. The parents turned their heads and looked at him with disdain. The king smiled and said, "Great, here they all are." Everyone was looking at the protagonist. Faye met his father's eyes. Faye introduced himself and said that he had arrived by order of His Majesty King Alfred Armando. He came closer and knelt down like everyone else in the hall. The king said to him, "It's been a while, huh?" Faye replied, "It's been 6 years, Your Majesty." The king was surprised. "How long has it been?" "Faye has grown up." MC replied, "His Majesty hasn't changed at all in that time." The king said, "Flattery is of course good, but he's already old." Alex Bonnet thought he couldn't even notice his vassal's lie. The king said, "Well, everyone is already here." First, he confirms that Faye is who he says he is. In addition, we need to decide on a punishment for the Bonnet family, and also decide how to treat the protagonist in the future. The king decided to discuss the latter first. From that moment on, the protagonist officially becomes Faye Dirk. The protagonist thanked the king. Alex shouted, "Wait, Faye is a member of the Bonnet family. They will decide for themselves how to treat him." The king was surprised, that's how. And what? Another secret murder and a false statement? Alex wanted to justify himself. No, this. But the king interrupted him and continued, "Up until this point, no matter what the aristocrats did, the country turned a blind eye to it. But this case goes beyond any limits. To make a false statement to the king, this can be regarded as treason, right?" Alex began to justify himself. They, the Duke's family, must be strong. Therefore, in this case, it was necessary to get rid of the one who, with his weakness, drags the family down. Such is the policy of this family. The king got a little angry. This family's policy, you say? Even if, let's say, the king accepts it. As for the fact that they dared to make a false statement, it doesn't change anything. Alex tried to say something again, but the king didn't let him. Continued speaking. Besides, Alex said weak? Then how will he explain that this weak one defeated his son in a duel last week? Alex wanted to ask how he knew, but the king again didn't give him a chance to speak and continued. Duke is a position granted to him by the authorities. Maybe it would have been better for Faye to take over the status of Duke and not Bram. Alex got indignant and said, Bram lost because of his carelessness. He was defeated not because of his abilities. In the future, Bram will become a spiritualist comparable in strength to Alex. Passing on the status of Duke to a person weaker than himself is the same as humiliating this title. The king asked him why he was so nervous. The king was just suggesting. By the way, Alex said that he should not be inferior in strength to him, right? So he should be stronger than the current Alex. Did the king get it right? Alex sweated and said, well, something like that. The protagonist will never defeat a spiritual mage. Suddenly, someone's voice was heard. Is that so? Then why don't they have a duel? Suddenly, the door swung open and Lanala ran into the hall. Faye saw her. The king smiled and said, isn't today an amazing day? Although it's not the beginning of the year and she came here, Lady Lanala. She waved her hands at Faye. He said in surprise, Lana-san? She started hugging him. Oh, you're my workout. Faye was embarrassed and said, wait, His Majesty is here. She said that he is her shy little boy. The king stroked his beard and asked, maybe he should calm down a little? He turned to Lady Lanala and asked for what purpose she came today. She answered, to see her son. The king was surprised. With a son? Did she have a son? Lanala gently hugged the protagonist and said, here he is, my dear son, my Faye. The king smiled and said, I see. It seems that her healing magic was able to heal even fatal wounds. So that's how it is. Alex was indignant. Your Majesty, who is this ignoramus? The king said, that's right, they have never met before. Then allow me to introduce her. This beautiful woman, Lanala Dixirk, the current head of the Dixirk family. Alex was surprised and asked, from the Great Seven? The protagonist was surprised to hear this. Alex asked again, that is, the Dixirk family with healing magic? The king asked, so Lanala, what did she mean by a duel? She answered, everything is as she said. She thinks that they should all look at Faye's current abilities. The king was surprised, that's how it is. She confirmed it once more and asked, wouldn't it be better that way, Faye? He didn't know what to answer. Alex said that he didn't mind. Well, he was ready to prove his abilities once again, inevitably. Faye thought, what kind of inevitable? The king was thinking, but it was interesting. The protagonist thought, Alex's magic stored in Aron's crystal, which he used in the previous duel, was probably weaker than the real one. In addition, there was also the magic of the spirit. Sooner or later, it would still stand in his way. Therefore, Faye said loudly that he also agreed. The king thought again. That's how it was. Well then, a duel. However, it would not be today. The king sternly said that the duel would be in 15 days. And before that day, they both should prepare well. After that, Faye came home, stood in the shower and thought, his eyes, the way he looked at him. Then he punched the wall and thought, he hasn't weakened at all. His magic power, it's contempt. He'll just kill him. Will he be able to win? He doesn't know. He leaned against the wall. He thought he could. He won't get any mercy. The next morning he came to school. He met his friends. Geisen said that it was just a nightmare. The protagonist looked at him in surprise. Geisen grabbed his head and added, then one, then another. Iris said that from today on she'll have to stay after school and train. MC asked in surprise, what are they talking about? Can they explain normally? The day before Aaron came to class and apologized for being late, he was sad. Everyone started talking. Why does he look a little rumpled? One of the students asked, what happened? He replied that this time their class, it was decided to hold a competition with Class A. Shortly before classes began, Nerold told him that Aaron was full of enthusiasm despite the early morning. Then he came up to him from behind, waving a fan, and added that no matter how hard he tried, his student's strength was weak. They would always be somewhere under his student's feet. Aaron said that he could not pretend that he had not heard his words. Moreover, wasn't it his class's Barm who lost a duel to his student Faye the other day? He replied irritably, so that's how he spoke. Then he said, then let their classes decide who was stronger in a competition. Aaron was very surprised by what he heard. In a competition? He answered him. Right, they would have a battle of teams. That's how they would determine whose class was stronger. And he asked, or was he afraid? Then he could kneel down right now, and so be it. He would forgive him. Eren shouted, who else should fall on their knees? Gaisen told the protagonist that there would be 3 versus 3 team battles. One, of course, the protagonist. He also told him that Eren said in class that they are on good terms with the protagonist, so he relies on them, and added that teamwork is very important. He will not accept any objections. Gaisen and Iris fell to their knees and added that something like this. MC thought that it was somehow boring. The protagonist answered that it concerns the students from Class A. He has an assumption. Iris asked in surprise, what? Meanwhile, Barm folded his arms in front of his chest and asked that Class A will fight those bugs from E. He asked not to make him laugh. Gaisen said that, as he heard, Barm, Alice, and Struff Carnell will participate from Class A. Iris swung her arms to the sides and said that they have already caused trouble for the teacher. Amelia put her hands on her chest and said that the protagonist had just returned from the royal castle. He must be terribly tired. MC put his hand to his chin and answered, not really. He added that, moreover, it would even be a good warm-up for him. Gaisen asked, what is he talking about? Iris thought that something happened in the castle. Amelia thought that he was so cool. Gaisen put his hand to his chin and asked, Struff Carnell? Who is this? Iris asked, who knows? The protagonist answered that in any case, they need to give it their all. Sometime after class, they stood and talked. The protagonist said that first of all, he thought that Iris and Gaisen should learn to work together. He asked in surprise, what? The protagonist answered that the opponent is a spiritualist. It is impossible to defeat him without cooperation. She asked irritably, cooperate with him? Gaisen answered that there is no need to look at him like trash. Meanwhile, MC came up to them and sat down and then tied their legs. Gaisen asked him to wait and asked what he was doing. Then the protagonist stood up and asked how about racing on 3 legs. He thought it would be perfect to learn how to cooperate. They took one step and immediately fell to the floor. Iris started yelling at him to move away from her and not to touch her in strange places. To this, he replied that he was not touching anything and that she should not make up anything for herself, and called her a gorilla. Then she told him to get up already, and then asked if he could not move his legs at all. He furiously replied that she could not. They started standing and swearing at each other. The protagonist apologized to them and added that it seemed he had made a mistake and suggested trying another way. Then he used magic, which flew close between their faces. They looked at him in surprise, and they started shouting, what is he doing? It's dangerous. The protagonist put his hand to his chin, answered that it's nothing. He just wondered if they could handle the unexpected, and they have no problem with that. They continued shouting that it was really dangerous. If he had hit, he could have seriously injured them. Amelia stood there watching all this and thought that the protagonist was a sadist. Then the protagonist pointed his finger up and said, from above. They looked up and were surprised and started shouting that it would definitely hit them. And at that moment, they simultaneously used water wall. MC looked at all this in surprise. Then he laughed and added that they both complimented each other so much. Meanwhile, Barm told Alice not to do anything stupid during the battle. She looked at him in surprise and asked, what? Then he turned to her and answered that he would be the one fighting Faye. Then he asked if she could fight in tandem with Struff. She thought that Brother Barm was with Brother Faye. Then he added that she never answered him. She answered that she understood him. Then he turned to her again and told her to move. Lately she had stopped obeying him at all. She held the straps of her backpack and answered that this was not so. He asked, really? Then what? The problem is in emotions? She asked him, what? He thought that he also had problems with emotions. It was definitely not because of Faye, it was because of Alice. And what was it? Hate? No. Envy? But why? He walked further forward. She stopped and thought what to do. She did not want to go. Her legs did not obey. She could not move. He walked with his back to her. Then he turned his head and asked, why is she stuck? She apologized to him. Then she turned and ran and yelled that she had some things to do and he should go back alone. He stopped and looked at her and said, oh shit. Meanwhile, Gaisen and Iris were standing and asked at the same time, is he serious? The protagonist replied, that's right, so it's better to be careful. Alice's abilities are much higher than Barm's. Meanwhile, Alice ran up to him and clicked, Faye the brother. They all looked at her in surprise. Gaisen said that they still had things to do so they would go. The protagonist asked in surprise, what? Iris apologized to him and added that she would go too, and suggested meeting later. The protagonist looked at Alice. Then he dusted himself off and said that he had to go too. Alice grabbed his hand and asked him to wait. She asked, can they talk for a while? He replied, no. Then he thought that it was impossible. Then he agreed and added that it would only be for a short while. She was very happy about that. The protagonist thought, why? They were sitting on a bench in the park. She asked him, he will also participate in the competition, right? He replied, what do you mean? She too. She replied, exactly, and added that she was interested in why she was chosen. The protagonist sat and thought that she was just modest and timid, but her abilities were much higher than Barm's. She sat and thought that the main thing was that he was talking to her now. Then he replied that she should not worry. He was not going to bring personal emotions to the competition. She asked him, does he really intend to win? He replied, of course. She replied, that's how it is. Does that mean he will fight her? He replied, yes. Then she stood up, clenched her fists, and happily said that she would definitely win. He was very shocked by what he heard. Then she bowed to him and left. The next day, MC and his friends were sitting in the cafeteria. He was reading a book where it said Chapter 22, Strategy Meeting. He asked in surprise, what kind of strategy meeting was this? Geisen was sitting there drinking juice from a straw and asked, they were spiritualists, right? They would never defeat them by force, would they? Also, because of that chicken, they would have to cooperate, although even he knew perfectly well that the chances of winning were slim. She asked in surprise, what? Then she said that it was surprising to see him so calm and reasonable. She thought he had more brains after all. He asked furiously, what? They started arguing. The protagonist turned to them and said that in any case, they should order something first. Meanwhile, they had a lot of desserts at the table. The protagonist said that in any case, they should listen to his plan first. Then he asked Gaison if he had any ideas to win. He answered yes and asked them to listen. He began to tell them that their spirits are shaped like animals, right? Does that mean they can do it? Iris and Faye sat and looked at him in surprise. Iris asked, animals? He answered, they understand, right? The protagonist put his hand to his chin and sat thoughtfully. Then he answered that he gives up. Iris said she gave up too. She added that he seemed to have figured out how to exploit the animal's lack of intelligence, but she couldn't figure out how. He slammed his fist on the table, then sighed. Okay, so be it, he will tell. He said, bait. The protagonist spat out the lemonade that he was drinking. Iris asked, what does bait mean? He answered, that means you need to distract the spirit, and while it will enjoy the food, they will fight the magician directly. They are animals, so they are probably very stupid, so they will definitely succeed. The protagonist closed his eyes and thought that there was no hope. Iris put her hand to her forehead and said that the only idiot is him. Then MC said that spirits do not care about food. He jumped up in surprise and asked, aren't they just like animals? The protagonist replied that for most spirits, the source of magical power is food received from a mage. Therefore, they are absolutely not interested in their food. He will not be able to distract the spirit by putting food in front of it. It is simply impossible. Geisen stood with his mouth open. He was shocked. Iris said that he always sleeps in class. That's why he does not know elementary things. Instead of putting food for spirits, she thinks it would be much more effective to use him as bait. He shouted in surprise, why is he bait? Then the protagonist put his hand to his chin and said, Gaison as bait. He said that it was an idea. They both looked at him in surprise, simultaneously asked, what? Then he began to shout furiously, why should he be bait? The protagonist asked to be quiet and not get angry, and to listen to him first. He said that he had been watching them for a long time. In fact, Iris has incredibly pure magical power. The difference in their physical abilities is small, but it is in their magical power that they have significant differences, and they can use this. His strong point is his impressive power. Iris asked him what he wanted to say by this. The protagonist replied that it was therefore best if he attacked the enemy from the front, and since she was dexterous and agile, she would attack from behind. He started shouting again and asked, is he kidding? The protagonist asked, what do you mean? Is he sure that this is the best option for him? If he wants, then tomorrow they can train? He asked how. MC answered that he will attack from the front, and he will take his spell. Geisen asked him furiously, does he want to write off him to enrage? Iris put her hand to her chin and said that in this case they will be able to attack only one enemy. Geisen clenched his fists and said, right, so the protagonist will take on two? The protagonist answered yes, but he thinks he will only have to deal with one person. Iris looked at him in surprise and asked, what do you mean? He replied that his opponent would most likely be Bram. He is too proud. They think he will want to share with Alice. Most likely, he will order her to stay behind or send her to help Struff. Iris said that he said yesterday that Alice is stronger than Bram. The protagonist replied that it can be said that Struff is definitely weaker than the Bonnets. In other words, Alice is not only stronger, but also unpredictable. They should be afraid of her the most. That is why they will need Geisen as bait. He jumped up again and began to shout furiously. Which one, by the way? Is he? Meanwhile, Struff looked in on them. Leaning on his hand, he asked what was going on. Were they really thinking about a strategy? It was hard to be a small fish. They were very surprised. Then Geisen leaned his hand on the table and asked who he called small fry. He answered that it was them. Iris asked who he was anyway. He looked at her in surprise and asked if she knew who he was. He fell in love immediately. MC asked if he was Struff Carnell. He looked at him and asked if he was that same Faye Dirk. He then added that he had heard of him. It was pretty stupid to remain so powerful among simple mages. While these two were slowing him down, he was unlikely to show himself. Geisen asked him furiously if he was trying to start a fight. Iris jumped up and asked what he said. He asked them to be quiet, and there was no need to get angry just because he told the truth. They knew it was true, right? Geisen was very angry and said that a little more and they would have power over them. Even Faye would not be able to hold them back. Struff replied that they weren't upset. They were going to lose this battle anyway. Then he walked up to Iris, put his hand on her shoulder and said in her ear, "What does she think? Kitten, why don't they just give up, like he says, to avoid any more trouble?" Geisen asked Kitten and pointed at Iris. Was he talking about that gorilla? He asked him how dare he behave like that with a girl? The husband would make sure he got it good. Geisen yelled at him not to make him laugh. He didn't even know what she was made of. Iris asked what that meant. What was she made of? He turned around and started to walk away, waved his hand, said that good luck to them anyway, although it was useless anyway. The protagonist asked him to wait. Struff turned his head at him in surprise. The main character added that he was wrong. They would definitely lose to these three. He asked him if he even realized what he was saying. The protagonist answered that it was true. Struff asked, "Is that so?" Then he would wait impatiently. They would see each other again. Geisen sat, angry and shouting that he was so annoyed by him. Iris said that he was not as bad as she thought. Geisen pointed at her and said that she was a traitor, that she was not the one who was going to be the bait. The protagonist answered that everything was fine, that they would definitely win together, that they had to believe him. Then Melia came and started to save the protagonist. She apologized for making them wait. He asked her, was she done yet? She answered, yes. MC said that they had 9 days left so that they would not regret it later, and suggested that they practice well. Struff lay on the bench and thought about Iris, that it was all because of that mage girl. 9 days later, after training, everyone came to the stadium for, probably, the battle. One of the students said that they were all together again and added that he heard an argument between the teachers. He was told that it was obvious that Class E had no chance of winning. Another asked, didn't they hear? Faye is in Class E. So everyone was finally gathered. The team stood and waited for the match to begin. Nerold spoke into the microphone that Class A was against Class E. He suggested that everyone enjoy what was waiting for them and place their bets. Then he said, damn, Aaron is so smug. At that time, Aaron stood, all wet, and shouted that he believed in them and asked if they could hear him. He believed that they would definitely win. They stood and talked. The protagonist said that it all started when he got angry because everyone was laughing at his class. Iris said that they would definitely win. There were people sitting in the stands talking. One of them whispered to look at Aaron. His whole back and even his butt were wet with sweat. They asked him, is his butt wet? Maybe he just shit himself? They answered that he had already half given up. Aaron stood and shouted for them to try hard. He believed in them. Geisen replied that they would do their best. Nerold continued to speak into the microphone that he was explaining the rules. They can use the iron crystal. If they get injured during the battle, it will be their responsibility alone. If they can't disable the opposing team, then they win. The protagonist said that he would take Bram and Alice on himself and Struff on them. Geisen replied that he should rely on. Nerold announced the start of the duel. MC thought that he should enchant the body. Then he ran past Struff, who at that time was surprised to think that this is speed. The protagonist used a clay shield. He approached Bram and Alice. Bram said that he had come after all. There was no turning back now. The protagonist replied that, as he wanted, he would be his opponent. Struff said that this meant that his opponent would be, before he could finish speaking. Geisen and Iris interrupted him, saying in unison, they. He pointed and said that he was not a small fish. No matter how many of them there were, nothing would change. Geisen shouted he did not expect it to be easy. Iris shouted that it was time to teach him a good lesson. Struff began to say that they should make a contract with him, a noble spirit. Iris shouted that she would not allow him. Struff added that he should feed himself, his power. Alice used a dense ball. Thus, she blocked their attack. They were very surprised by this. MC was also shocked. Struff continued to say that the spirit should absorb his power and show it here. Then he used a lightning rod. Thus, he summoned the spirit. The protagonist attacked Alice with a fireball. She was able to successfully block the attack with a water ball. The protagonist thought so. She's incredibly strong. She just produced 6 Fey fireballs with her 12 water balls. It has the ability to instantly determine if her magic is inferior to the enemy's, and then reflect it with an attack twice as strong. If she feels that someone from a different point of view is a threat, she will agree with them to protect herself. Bram, I shouted for her to get out of the way and go help Struff. She answered fearfully, yes. The protagonist attacked her, but she managed to turn around. He thought that he should deal with Bram and stop her. He can't let her go this way. Meanwhile, Geisen looked at Iris and asked, are you ready? And asked her not to screw up. She told him that this concerns him first and foremost. Struff asked, "What's the matter? They are not going to attack? How cute are they when they are angry?" Iris shouted at him, not to get his hopes up, and they ran to attack. Struff put his hands in front of his chest and shouted for them to try it. He used Thunder Needle. Geisen shouted that he would show him who the small fry were. While sitting and discussing the plan a while ago, MC asked what they thought was the weak point of a spiritualist. Geisen put his hand to his chin and replied, "Isn't it because they don't have a weak point that allowed them to dominate them?" The protagonist replied that he was right. They say that spiritualists don't have obvious weaknesses. But that's not true. Spiritualists' weakness is that spirits use their magic. Geisen waved his hands to the sides and asked, "Isn't that their advantage? Spirits are stronger than normal mages." The protagonist replied that that's why they are at a disadvantage, not being able to use it. But it is precisely because spirit magic is too strong that there is one gap that spirit magic can't fill. Iris looked at him and asked what it was. He replied that using spirit magic, they can't use any other spell. Of course, unless they use some special tools. In other words, while he uses spirit magic, the mage himself is vulnerable. The more confident he is, the more he is. This is persuasiveness. After that, Geisen used a firewall during the duel. A firewall is an intermediate agent. It is too early for him to use it. Naturally, he does not know how to use it yet. Struff said that he does not think he can protect with it. Geisen, because he knows without it, he was not going to stop him, he just needs to buy time for 1 second. Even if only 1 second, he will buy as much time as he can. He needs to direct his spirit magic at him. And at this time, Iris was already behind him, and she used a fireball. Meanwhile, Barm used a fire arrow. The protagonist was able to stop it. He thought it was great. If he just kept casting the spell on him, that he would have enough time, it would be an easy victory. Alice attacked the protagonist using a water spear. MC looked back and was shocked by the suddenness of the attack. He used a clay shield. Barm shouted at her not to interfere unless she was told. Alice apologized to him. The protagonist thought that she went against orders. This was a big miscalculation. Then he glanced at his team and thought that everything was going according to plan. Then he can't afford to lose. He used elemental control. Barm was angry and said that he was using deception magic again. Then he used a fire spear. Barm had encountered this magic before. It did not scare him before. The protagonist also used a fire spear. Barm was shocked by this attack and fell out of the battle. The protagonist thought he had knocked him out. Now he had to deal with Alice and buy some time. She shouted, "Reveal yourself, Watershell." MC was very surprised. Barm tried to tell her something, but she apologized to him. Then she turned to him and added that she wanted to fight Faye. As a child, Alice always had Faye next to her. And she then thought that one day she also wanted to become like him. But the contract with the spirit was not concluded, and he had to leave home. She then stood and watched through the window as he ran away. Then she stood with all her brothers and sisters in front of her parents, and she was told that it was over. She should never call him brother again, and she should not make him repeat it. It was over. She thought that if she could stop him that day, but she does not have that kind of power. She wants to become stronger. She never wants to feel like this again. From that day on, she trained even harder, and to this day, she has never listened to Bram's orders. They stood facing each other to fight, and she thought that they were able to meet again. She was very happy. She wants to test her strength after so many years of hard training. She wants him to see her completely. Bram, that moment, stood up and shouted at her to stop making fun of him. In response, she hit him and asked if he could shut up. He fell to the floor. The protagonist turned to her and said that this was an unexpected turn of events. He didn't think that she wanted to really fight too. Anyway, her spirit is intermediate. It will be quite difficult. Her defense was impressive. Is there anything superfluous in her magic power? She stood there, looking at him and thinking that she knew that she was being rude. And in fact, there was. She should apologize. Why is Alice acting like this? There's nothing to think about. She hates him. She was happy to see him being kicked out of the house. What did he have to fight for too? Well, the stage was set. So all that was left was to fight. Meanwhile, Iris attacked Struff and used Fireball. Someone in the stands said, "Class E is attacking Class A. That was great work." After the attack, Iris asked, "Did it work?" Struff, who had not moved, replied, "It hurt." She asked, "Was it really zero effect?" He then turned to her and asked, "Is she serious? Is this causing him any harm?" He then looked at Geisen and said that the kid didn't seem capable of fighting at all. He was too small a fish. Iris shouted, "Seriously, so useless that he couldn't even land one hit." Geisen shouted that it wasn't so. He jumped up and attacked Struff, but he couldn't do any serious damage to him. Struff stood there holding his chest and asked, "What's wrong with his face?" and asked him to stop. Then he added that he was excited. Struff grabbed Iris by the chin and asked if she would go on a date with him. She thought how stupid she was. He was fighting both of them by himself. when she was the only one. He had to come up with the idea. Now it was her turn. Gaisen stood behind him and yelled at him not to even think that he had written him off so easily. He looked at him in surprise and asked, "What?" Then he added that it was unlike her. She was shaking like a scaredy cat. And where was the usual gorilla? Iris asked. "What?" Struff turned to him and said that he was trying harder than he expected. Gaisen pointed at him and said that they were trained differently than weaklings like him. Struff smiled and said, "So that's how it is, he has been forgiven." It seems he underestimates him. Iris came up to him and said that he was an idiot and that he used magic to stop him from standing there like a pillar. Gaisen replied that he knew everything. Not long before, they were sitting and discussing that even if he let his guard down, they shouldn't forget that he had a spirit, which meant that they couldn't defeat him that easily. So, even if he managed to put up a defense, he wanted them to do something they had been training so hard on for the past 9 days. Meanwhile, Struff shouted at them so that they wouldn't have any regrets later. He used Thunderstream. They used Firewall at the same time. The combined energy of two people using the same magic at the same time in the same place becomes stronger. Struff was confused. He thought, was that all his power? Even ordinary mages could reflect it. The protagonist said that spirit magic relies too much on its magic, even if it is reflected. Most of them will continue to use spirit magic simply because they have no other choice. Iris said that the protagonist was right. He is not trying to do anything anymore. Gaisen said that he is bored. Struff thought that his magic was able to reflect. Yes, it is simply impossible. When he was chosen to represent their class in the battle with E, he thought that it was impossible to lose. He would just throw simple spells and win. So he thought, but how is this possible? How could this happen? Two magicians just combined their power, and this is the result. Iris asked in surprise, is his magic weakening? Then when they were sitting, discussing the plan with the protagonist, he said that spirit magic takes much more energy than usual. If they can stand firm, then everything will work out. Iris shouted from the battle that they will stand until the end. They can do it. Gaisen said it was exactly as Faye had said. Struff stood there thinking that he couldn't win like that. He couldn't think of anything. Gaisen noticed that the spirit was leaving. Iris said that he had used up all his energy. Although they were at their limit too, Gaisen charged with a fist. He jumped up and asked him, "Are you tired of fighting with magic?" He told him that he thought he could beat him in a straight fight. Gaisen punched him in the face, and Struff punched him in the stomach. Struff yelled at him not to take on too much. Then, he thought that he had hit the bullseye. After he took a punch to the face, he fell to the ground. Gaisen stood there holding his chest and said that he had already told him that they were training differently. And then he fell to the ground too. Iris looked at them, said that in the end, she was losing in a regular fight. Only he could think of such a thing. He lay there exhausted and told her to talk to him again. She lay down next to them. Meanwhile, the battle between Alice and Faye continued. She stood with her hand on her chest and thought that she wanted to fight her brother Faye. MC looked at her, remembered a fragment from childhood, how he showed her his magic. Then he thought that he was hated a lot. He went to attack and thought that in this case she should not expect mercy from him. He used enchantment. Alice reflected his attack with a water wall. Then the protagonist using the morning ball. Alice thought that everything was bad. She used a water ball and many balls flew at him. Meanwhile, the protagonist used a flame spear and many spears flew at her. The protagonist thought, dodging the attacks, that with a quick and smooth movement, she cast various spells at him, one after another. Alice fell to her knees and thought that she thought so, that her brother Faye was amazing. Then she stood up, used water rain, and thought that she was not playing. MC looked at her attack and thought that each raindrop was as powerful as a bullet. Then he used a stone ball. She was shocked by his magic and thought that the stone ball instantly split into pieces with incredible precision, repelling the water drops. Crushing a stone ball is a very difficult task for an ordinary person, but Faye also managed to deliver an absolutely accurate blow, compensating for Alice's attack. She thought that he was amazing. After all, the fastest way to win would be to use the highest level fire magic, a wave of flames. But this would require too much energy. You cannot allow yourself to be exhausted when fighting Alice. She went on the attack and thought that she needed revenge. She had to win. The protagonist thought that it was visible even to the naked eye. Then she used water arrows again. He thought that without a drop of arrogance, she polished herself to an amazing level. Protagonist barely managed to dodge her attack and cast a curse. Then he thought that it was not that easy to get close to her after all. Elemental control required too much energy. Even if he used spirits, it was too reckless to do it against her. Then magic was still in the process of perfecting. He would have to attack from afar. There were people in the stands talking. One of the spectators asked in surprise, "Who knows? Is this really a freshman battle?" She thought, it seems that even the protagonist has a hard time breaking through the defense of the water shell, but he blocks attack magic so easily. No matter what she does, she has no confidence that she can defeat him. The protagonist looked at her and thought that the elementary intermediate magic, as he thought, she blocks, but it is becoming increasingly difficult to play on endurance. He used a fire arrow and thought that it seemed like all that was left was to go all out at once. Alice used a water floor, and she was protected. MC looked at his attack and thought that she was not letting down her guard just because she managed to reflect. This is just a military trick. He's going to use fire magic together with water magic. In other words, he's not going to break through the defense with this magic. But in fact, the highest level earth magic with the properties of water magic, the protagonist hit the ground with his hand and used earth wave. He thought that the water shell was focused on increasing the overall defense of the mage, so now he can break through her defense. Alice stood in her purse, thinking how strong he is, how much power he has, and why couldn't he make a contract with the spirit? Meanwhile, he was able to defeat her. Everyone in the stands was very shocked, and everyone said that this can't be, and that means Class E wins. She was lying on the ground. The protagonist looked at her and whispered her name. Then he looked at his palms, because it was so strong. Then he took his other hand with his hand and said that it was much stronger than he expected. Then everyone ran up to them and started congratulating them that they had won. They all thanked them for this spectacle and said that they were very long. They were also told that it was an easy victory for them. Geisen told them that they could call them again. Melia approached the protagonist and said that the way he used his magic was amazing. She put her hand on his shoulder and added that it was completely different from others. After this battle, the attitude towards magicians changed. They stopped openly despising them. Meanwhile, the protagonist arrived in the kingdom. The gates opened before him, and he entered. And finally, the 15th day after Phase 1 visit to the royal castle in 6 years had come. And now, he is heading there again. As King Armando promised, so were solemn preparations for the duel. Finally, the decisive battle. Many people from the kingdom gathered to watch this. Lettice put her hand to her cheek and said that the day had finally come for the two of them to fight. Then she asked the protagonist if he was okay. The king asked her what she was talking about. She was the one who started all this. Then she asked who this crowd of people was. The king replied that they also wanted to see the duel. After all, there was a lot of interest in the upcoming duel. Lettice said that Faye was really a celebrity. In the back row, two women were talking, and one of them asked who this woman was, talking to His Majesty in such a friendly manner. Barm and his family were standing aside, and he indignantly asked why the hell he had to watch through the monitor. Adi answered him that no matter how good he was, if his father's magic weakened, there would be big trouble. Lettice sat and thought that MC should do what he always wanted. Meanwhile, Alex was already on the battlefield and looked at the protagonist, then their eyes crossed. The protagonist thought that Alex was the man he once called father. Alex was already thinking that what is magic and spirit magic for? Mainly to fight demons, and also to protect what is dear to him. Would he answer? But he would say otherwise. Everything was for this moment. It would be a shame if he accidentally died. He tried so hard to survive. Meanwhile, they started telling them to get ready because there were 10 seconds left. Alex stood and thought that he was nervous. He wanted to add some zest to the battle. In a 1v1 battle between two mages, there are two main options to take first. The first is to cast an elementary level magic spell, which is weak, but requires less time to cast. This makes the enemy lose momentum. The second option is to use non-systemic magic, enchant the body. Intentionally force the enemy to cast a spell. Then you can block it and use a more. However, if your opponent is a strong mage, in the first case you will immediately find yourself overboard, but in the second case the stakes are so high that there will be no turning back. The protagonist stood looking at him and thought that the battle had not yet begun. But this is the magic that is concentrated inside him, an uncertain pose, and yet he is exceptional. Alice stood, looked, and thought that no matter what the protagonist does, he will not defeat his father. But they still wish him good luck. Barm stood that he is to blame for the fact that he became a laughingstock. The main character needs to use magic that he doesn't know about. The most important thing is to get a head start. MC thought, perfect. Isn't that so? The person who tried to ruin his life is just a big fish who simply did not have a worthy competitor. He is not going to tolerate this anymore. So in theory, use a fireball, or keep his distance by enchanting his body. When his opponent is the strongest spiritualist mage, before he can say how the battle began, the protagonist uses a fireball. At the same time, Alex uses a water ball. Then, Alex stands behind him and uses a fireball. Someone in the hall says that this is elementary magic, but the performance is incredibly fast. It seems that the abilities of the trembling mage are still at a high level. The protagonist was very shocked and thought that he was not there. Alex stood behind him, said that he was here. Then Alex used a stone ball and it flew into the protagonist's stomach. After the impact, he flew to the side and fell to the ground. While the protagonist was getting up, Alex stood in front of him and said that enchanting the body without a spell, he deservedly praised him. But why did he think that he could not do the same? MC laughed. Alex was confused and asked what was funny. He replied that his opponent was a lord from a family of influential families. Does he really think that he is so naive? Alex was shocked by what he heard and asked, "So, what's funny?" The protagonist replied that he just believes in him. Alex asked in surprise, "Believes?" The protagonist replied, "Yes, they believe that he is stronger than him." Then the protagonist used his attack and Alex was very shocked by this. MC asked, because this technique is familiar to him, right? He uses this that day, they wanted to kill him. Alex thought that with so much magic, and at such a speed, it was no wonder Brahm lost. The protagonist used a fire tornado. The protagonist thought back to the past and thought that he had been waiting for this moment for so long. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he had lived only for this. Was it all for this moment? Did Alex have so many fire tornadoes in his body? He stood and watched and thought that this was how it turned out. They told him that they had killed the protagonist. Then he shouted that he should have just died, that the like an obedient boy. Then he shouted, "Appear," thereby summoning the spirit Fire Panther, a spirit of the highest rank. The protagonist thought that with his one appearance, his magic simply crumbled. Of course, it shouldn't be that easy. Then MC used a water spear? Alex said, "Is that so?" Then he asked him if this was his true power. The audience began to shout that they could not see anything through the thick fog. Alex added that he was sorry. He was so lucky to survive that time. After all, he was weak and did the right thing then, giving the order to kill him. The protagonist thought that he was a fool. Alex added that in the end, the tremor-inducing poppy was just words, nothing more. And after that, he attacked the protagonist. The protagonist flew, thought that he could not. He did not think that he could win. After a firm landing on the ground, he sat down on his knee and thought that despite the fact that his hatred was so strong. Alex asked him, "Is that all? This is just a waste of time." The protagonist continued to think that for what purpose did he train so hard? It is still early, too early, the difference between what he was born with and what he learned. However, desire is not enough. One desire will never be enough to make up for the difference. MC heard a voice asking, "What? Is he giving up?" Then he brought his hand to his chest and thought, what? He had heard that voice before. Then he heard them asking him again if he was giving up. The protagonist thought that even before he showed his true power, was he really agreeing? These voices were coming from the spirits in his head. Then he got angry and thought, no, he can't use their power. They asked him why. The protagonist didn't answer and went on the attack using the water web. Alex asked, can such magic fight the magic of a top-level spirit? After all, this is only a small part of what he can do. He will send him to the afterlife with the strongest spirit magic. Then he used the fire spear. The protagonist thought that this path will end if he doesn't use his power. One of the spirits told him that there is only one way to defeat a top-level spirit. MC closed his eyes. He was told to remember why they chose him back then in the middle of his training. Was he really ready to end it all like this? He can't use the spirits he made a contract with. They told him that they were part of his true power. The protagonist looked at his hands and thought that it was true, because they were his spirits. Alex looked through the fire at the protagonist and said that he was real trash. The protagonist sat on his knees and thought that if he calmly used spirit magic against an ordinary mage, then he had no other choice. The protagonist folded his hands, raising 2 fingers up, began to say that he was the one who imprinted them. He was the one who bound them with chains, but he was the one who made a contract with them. Let him use their powers. Appear, free yourself. He thought that he would use all their power because they were also part of his power. In the meantime, the spirits appeared and he used Freeze World. And immediately the entire fire circle that was around him turned into ice. Alex was very scared from what he saw. He thought that this idiot used high-level magic. Then he asked him what he did. MC walked towards him, breaking the ice in front of him to pass. Alex used a fire arrow. Then he called him an idiot. The protagonist stood in front of him and smiled. Alex asked him why he was smiling. Then he threw spears at him and shouted that he would not live. The protagonist stretched out his hand in front of him and turned everything into ice and said that it was useless. This world would completely submit to his will. Everything would freeze. Alex's legs began to turn into ice. He was very shocked and shouted that his legs hurt. The protagonist said that it was impossible to defrost it with human efforts. Alex began to be completely covered in ice, and he shouted a curse. Then he again shouted the order and copy movie that he was a damn sorcerer. But his attack was useless. He did not succeed. MC stood confidently and looked at him. Alex was very confused and thought that it was impossible to surpass the magic of the spirit of the highest level. Only if the crystal of Arun, no magic can defeat his magic. The spirit of this does not exist. It is impossible for him to be defeated by a magician. He thought that it was impossible to be defeated by this man. Then he shouted again. The curse turned completely into ice. Everyone was very shocked, or someone asked, "Did Duke Alex give up?" Another asked, "What's going on?" 3 said that he could not see anything through the thick fog. Barm shouted that it was impossible. Adi bit her handkerchief out of nerves and shouted that she did not believe. Cecilia shouted for them to wait. The fog was dissipating. Alice folded her hands and said, "Brother Faye." Lana asked in surprise, "What just happened?" The king asked, "She knows something, right?" She asked him, "What is he talking about?" He answered, "About how Faye won." She started screaming. She was standing in the same place as him. Nothing could be seen through the thick fog. He asked her, "Does that mean she doesn't know why the arena suddenly became covered in ice? To use high-level magic so easily, there must be something wrong." Lana answered that she knew, but she didn't want to talk. She started running away. The king turned to her and said that he still had to find out everything. She screamed, "See you later." He screamed, "There she is, the naughty girl." Then a servant came to the king with a book. He was out of breath. The king asked, "What's the matter?" It seemed that he was in a great hurry to get to him. The servant answered, "Here," and pushed the book towards him. This book was the legend of the 5 imperial beasts. After some time, the protagonist was lying on the bed in the palace and thought that everything was over. He thanked his spirits. Alex was sitting with his family at the table. He was very angry and kicked the table and shouted, "Damn it!" Barm asked, "How could he lose?" He answered him that he didn't know. Adi asked him, "What will happen now?" Alex angrily answered that he can no longer do anything. Punishment must follow. If Lenara had not saved him, and then none of this would have happened. He then remembered how they answered him that they understood him, and everything will be done. After some time, the protagonist and Alex's family were kneeling before the king. The king was sitting on the throne and said that it seemed that everyone had gathered. He announced the punishment of the Bonnet family. Alfred Armando orders the confiscation of part of the Bonnet family's name and possessions. This concerns the territories of the eastern part. The Bonnet family will be under the supervision of the kingdom for 6 months. All of the above must be carried out from now on, unconditionally. Everyone was very shocked by what they heard. Then the king added that if there are no objections, then Alex must sign. The servant brought the order to Alex. The king then continued and said that regarding Faye Dirk, as he had already said, from now on he would officially be referred to as Faye Dirk. In addition, he would receive the title of Baron. The protagonist was very surprised by what he heard and said, "Wow." The king added that also regarding the territories confiscated from the Bonnets, he would give them to him as his property. The Bonnet family were horrified by what they heard. Alex clenched his teeth and glared at the protagonist. The king added that later, all the details would be written down in detail, and at that point the Bonnet family could leave the castle. They would need to come again later to settle all the formalities and sign. The king then said that Baron Faye, he would like to ask you to stay for a while. The Bonnet family left. When the doors closed, the king said that he had a favor to ask of him. He asked him if he could teach Lettice magic. MC asked in surprise, "What?" The king folded his arms and said, "Teach Lettice." The protagonist asked in surprise, "Why him? There are, for example, powerful court magicians in the kingdom." The king looked at her and said that he told him the same thing, but she told him that Faye promised to teach her. That's all he got in return. He asked, "A promise?" Lettice then clenched her fists and started screaming that 6 years ago, the last time he passed the castle, he promised her. The protagonist shouted, "The last time." Then he remembered how they stood, holding hands, and she asked him about the promise of magic. The king then looked at him and asked, "Does he agree?" The protagonist replied, "Okay." Then MC looked at her and thought that it was a promise. He was sure the court magicians could have taught her much better. But she was waiting for the promise he made 6 years ago to be fulfilled. Even though his death was announced, she had a strong will. After a while, they were walking down the hallway and she took his hand and shouted for him to follow her. Then she opened the door and told him to come in. The protagonist bowed and apologized. He thought that this was the princess's room. Selena was standing there and greeted Lettice. The protagonist looked at her in surprise. Then she added that it was nice to meet you. She was Lettice's servant. Her name is Selena. Lettice sat on the sofa and pointed to a chair for the protagonist and told him to sit there. The protagonist bowed and said that his name was Faye. It was nice to meet you too. Then MC sat on the chair and she asked him, "He forgot, right?" The protagonist said, "Forgot." She started screaming. Did he forget the promise he made to the girl? Then she calmed down, put her hands to her cheek, and said that tomorrow he would show her the royal landing. The protagonist wanted to say sure, but then asked, "What?" So she meant to walk with her highness around the royal landing? She told him that it was just the two of them. He asked, "The two of them?" She told him that it was another promise. He asked, "What?" She told him that he had promised for the broken promise and he owed it. The protagonist said in surprise, "Yes." Then he said, "If he starts practicing magic with her now, then there will be no breaking of promise." Then she asked him, "Does he agree?" MC replied, "Of course." Lettuce happily shouted, "Hooray!" Spreading her arms out to the sides, she added that she was looking forward to it. The protagonist put his hands on his knees and said that he did not know if his knowledge was enough to teach magic. She told him that these were small things, the main thing was that he would be with her. He answered that walking alone, without an escort, was somehow dangerous. She immediately jumped up and asked furiously, "What?" Then she shouted that he had already agreed. Then she added that if something happened, he would save her. She asked, "Okay?" The protagonist tried to say something, but he was too scared to say anything. She asked him. He wanted to say, "Of course, Latisse, is that right?" He answered, "Yes." Then she folded her arms in front of her chest, sat down on the couch and laughed. Then she said that he should just agree already. The protagonist began to leave, and she closed the door behind him, saying that she was looking forward to tomorrow. Selena covered her mouth with her hand, asked, "Does she have a date tomorrow?" Then she added that she was so cute when she was embarrassed. Latisse clenched her fists, shouted, "Enough," and asked not to make fun of her. Would be better if she helped her choose clothes for tomorrow. Selena asked, "Clothes? Does it matter? Men find it much more interesting when a girl is naked, don't they?" She called her a fool. The next day, Mendes stood in the hallway and said that the main character should hurry up. Then he went to the door and asked, "Is he ready?" Opening the door, he apologized. MC stood and looked at him and said that it cost him. Anna adjusted the bow tied on his neck and asked him not to move, saying that now she would make a prince out of him. Mendes was surprised by his clothes. Then he asked him, "Will he go in a dress uniform?" After some time, the main character entered Latisse's room. He apologized. She stood and looked at him, clutching her hat in her hands. Then she said that she was tired of waiting for him and asked what he was doing. She was surprised by his clothes. He looked at her and was shocked by her beauty. She asked him in a tiered voice, "Why is he looking like that?" The protagonist started to deny that he hadn't looked anywhere. Selena asked her if they should hurry and pointed to her watch. Latisse looked at her watch and grabbed the protagonist's hand and shouted, "Let's go." They ran across the palace grounds. The protagonist asked her what was going on. Why were they in such a hurry? She told him that she just didn't want to waste time. She wanted to have as much fun as possible. They finally had a date. Then she stopped abruptly and MC almost ran into her. She pushed him away and said, "Stop." She looked around the corner and saw that there was a guard standing there. The protagonist asked what she was doing. She told him that there was security there. They needed to hide. He thought, "Why?" Then he asked, "Doesn't she have permission?" She told him that of course not. It's forbidden. He asked, "But what would happen if they got caught?" If anyone was going to be scolded, it was him. She told him not to worry for everyone. She was studying with Selena all day today. The protagonist raised his finger and said that it couldn't be helped. He used a search circle. Non-systematic magic. A search circle of magic that spreads a small amount of magical power and uses the effects of this power to determine where in the area the spell is located to people. 8 in front, 5 people on the right and left, but there were only 3 behind. The protagonist took her in his arms and asked him to forgive him. He enchanted the body. She asked in surprise, "What?" MC thought that he needed to run while there were few guards. He used a black spirit doll and created a copy of their bodies. Synthetic advanced magic developed in a painful attempt to hide from pursuers when Faye was expelled from the Bonnet family. The guards heard rustling, asked who was there. Then one of them shouted that someone was there. 2 shouted, "Stop." Meanwhile, the protagonist was holding Latisse in his arms, walked behind him, and came out of the castle. He asked her, was there always so little security in the castle? She didn't answer him. Meanwhile, they came to the city. The protagonist looked at her and asked what her plans were for today. She folded her arms in front of her chest, was very unhappy, and then said that they were on a date and there was no need to speak so formally, as if he was accusing her of being royal. Then she said that it was definitely decided and he should just call her Latisse. He asked, "What? How can he call her that?" Then he suggested that maybe just Letty. She asked him, did he just fall off the sea? However, she was not against it. They were walking down the street and she smelled a smell and asked, "What is that smell?" The protagonist asked her if she wanted to eat something. She raised her hand, clenched her fist, and answered that she didn't really, she wasn't hungry. MC thought, why is she trying to hide it? Passed by a stall where there were desserts, meat and buns. She stood and looked at it all, and her mouth was watering. The protagonist noticed this and said that he was hungry, then asked if she would agree to have lunch with him. She asked, what? Feeling shy, she grabbed him and added that if he insisted, then so be it. The protagonist thought, what kind of so be it? They approached the stall, and the seller greeted them and added that they were a cute couple. Lettuce asked him to give them 2. To which the seller replied, "Sure." They ate, and Lettuce said that it was very tasty. She was very happy with this food. They walked further down the street. Holding hands, she asked him what they were going to do next. The protagonist thought that just in case, he activated a circular search and checked for enemies. He was very surprised. 5 people suddenly disappeared. He thought they were being followed. Keeping a certain distance, what is their purpose? She asked him. What's the matter? He replied, nothing. Then they saw a crowd gathered around one person, and he said, it seems there is something interesting there, and offered to take a look. They came, and she was very happy. MC thought that she seemed to be having fun, no need to bother her unnecessarily. Then he asked her to wait here for a while. She asked him, why? He saw something at the kiosk. He wants to take a closer look. She replied that she would go with him then. He replied, no, he is quick. She should wait for him here for a while, okay? She agreed with him. He moved away, and she wondered what was going on. The protagonist was using a circular search to make sure that Her Highness was safe. He needed to eliminate suspicious people. He thought that he was moving further and further away. Had he been noticed? He couldn't let him get away. He enchanted the body, and when he caught up with them, they were standing around the corner. He asked why they were following him. He attacked them. Then he used an earthen wall to prevent them from leaving. Then he wrapped them in earthen ropes. Their hoods flew off, and one of them said what was to be expected from Lord Fei. The protagonist glanced at the sword and saw a coat of arms there. He thought they were the castle guards. Then he said that now it was clear why the castle was so poorly guarded. He said if they were on their side, then why didn't they tell him from the beginning? They answered that they were going to, but His Majesty forbade them to do so. He asked them if they were sure the castle was safe. They answered that there was no need to worry, the castle was completely safe, as always. So the number of guards was deliberately reduced so that they could pass unhindered? He asked them if there was anyone else here. They told him not to worry about it and advised him to come back quickly. Then the protagonist left them and came to Lettuce. He apologized for making her wait. She asked him, did he still not buy anything? He answered that it was not as interesting as he thought. Then he pointed out that there was something interesting there. She asked, is it interesting there? He answered, yes, he thought it was a good way to make a living. She was very surprised and said that it was impossible. He asked, what? Why? She said that now Fei Baron became a nobleman. He received the status, and in exchange for protecting their country and its inhabitants from all evil spirits. How can a grateful person make money in this way? He became sad and said, that's how. She asked him if everything was okay. The Executioner of Darkness was watching them. He laughed slightly and said that he found it. They were walking down the street, and suddenly MC knelt down and grabbed his head. Alice was scared and asked what was wrong with him. What happened? Is he okay? The main character held his head and thought, what just happened? Then he answered that he was okay. She asked him, are you sure? No need to hide weakness. The protagonist looked at the sky and thought that he just felt it. It was comparable to beasts. Who is it? The Executioner of Darkness was very high in the sky and he was laughing. Then he crossed his arms in front of his chest and said that this is ice. By eating it, he will gain new strength. Fire, ice, wind, thunder, earth. First ice, he will start with it. After some time, the protagonist said that it was already very late. They were in a store, and she tried on different dresses. Then she said that she was here for the first time, but she really liked it. She would really like to come here again. She stood with her back to him and turned to him and asked, and he? MC held all her purchases, peeking out from behind the boxes, replied, sure. He had a great time too. Then she became happy and asked, really? Great, she was so happy. She then suggested that they should definitely go there again. He agreed with her, but only if she was a little more modest with her purchases next time. She asked him, what was he talking about? They approached the palace, and one of the guards who was watching them thanked him for his work. He took the bags from him and said that they would handle the rest themselves. The protagonist thanked him. Lettuce asked, what do you mean? Another thank you for the work? As if she had already tormented him that much. She then came up close to him and said, see you later. She asked him, would he definitely come to meet again? She then waved at him and said bye. The protagonist waved back and told her to take care of herself. He walked down the street and remembered the situation when he grabbed his head. At that time, he was closely watched. He approached the carriage. Mendez met him, said that his carriage was ready. He thanked him, and Mendez apologized for causing him so much trouble. The protagonist replied that he should take care of himself. Suddenly, someone attacked near the carriage. The protagonist was shocked and looked out the window and thought, why are they watching him so closely? He felt that it was definitely an enemy. He thought, could it really be those same killers again that were 6 years ago? No, it would be too risky for them now. Then who could they want to harm him? Until recently, he lived in the forest. Before starting school, he did not communicate with people at all. Suddenly, tentacles began to stick out of the ground, and they entered his carriage. MC was very scared. The whole carriage was in these tentacles. He thought, what is this? Then he jumped out of the carriage and started running. He thought he had to run. He had goosebumps. He couldn't let them catch him. But the tentacles caught up with him, grabbed his leg. The protagonist was all tied up. He couldn't get out. The executioner of darkness stood in front of him, and he said that he finally caught him. The protagonist looked at him with fear. He answered that he shouldn't look at him like that. They were brothers and suggested living in peace. The protagonist asked, brothers? The executioner of darkness approached him and took him by the chin and said that they had the same strength. The executioner of darkness approached him and grabbed his chin and said that they have the same power. There are only a few of them in the whole world. MC thought, what does this mean? What is he even talking about? The executioner of darkness was drooling and asked him for forgiveness for not being able to control his feelings when he saw him in person. The protagonist sat tied up and looked at him and asked, control his feelings? The executioner asked, he understands, right? They have the same power. The protagonist asked, what is he talking about? What is his power? Feelings? The executioner of darkness replied that he should stop pretending. He knows everything. They met for the first time. Why does he feel like he has met his enemy? The protagonist asked, what is the purpose of his actions? He raised his hand to his chin and said, the purpose, then? The one who made a contract with them. The one who is granted and entrusted to use all his powers. Arrogant and irreverent, possessing power, he is the one who protects from the evil that has overtaken and cleanses it. MC thought anxiously, these are chants. He added that he is the executioner of darkness, and he will be given a sword as black as pitch. The imperial sword that controls all darkness. He will come to this here and now. Then he said, dark sword, and a sword appeared in his hands. He continued, saying that his goal is to kill him. The protagonist was frightened and thought, what? The Dark Slayer said that he would also take away his power, take away his imperial ice spirit. The protagonist thought, dark sword. Before he sealed his power, he trained again and again. There can be no mistake. The executioner of darkness added that only those who have a contract with the imperial spirits can wield this sword. The magic of the imperial dark spirit is the dark sword. Indeed, there were legends that there were imperial spirits of the 7 attributes: fire, water, wind, thunder, and earth, light and darkness. However, until now, only fire, water, wind, thunder, and earth, known as the 5 imperial beasts, have been observed. It has long been suspected that there are also light and dark spirits, but these were only assumptions. Faye crouched down and grumbled that he didn't think he would have to ask his spirits for help again so soon. He thought his leg was bothering him again. It was painful. The protagonist used the ice sword. The opponent exclaimed, finally, how he had been waiting for this moment. The protagonist realized that he couldn't do without high-level recovery magic and full healing. He activated them. At that moment, the opponent attacked him and exclaimed that he wouldn't let him heal. He simply had to take his power. Did he hear? Faye noticed that the blade of his weapon was black. Was that because he was using the Sword of Darkness? Did that mean his sword couldn't be frozen? The opponent asked, his Imperial Ice Sword freezes everything it touches, right? The protagonist, holding back his blow, admitted that it did. It freezes everything except darkness. The opponent exclaimed, darkness has no form. How can you freeze something intangible? He continued that he would never defeat him and struck the protagonist. Faye deftly avoided the attack, but his arm hurt. It was swollen. The opponent noted that his wound looked pretty painful, right? He clearly did not want to strain himself too much. Still, MC was not going to give up. He used the flame spear and attacked the guy in black. He also deftly dodged the blow and exclaimed, he told him that he would fail. He jumped up, activated the black aura. Faye immediately activated the skill, Enchant Body. The opponent asked him, he already understood this, right? The protagonist replied that he would not give up. The opponent objected. Their difference in strength is huge, and he is also wounded. He will never defeat him. MC resisted him as best he could, but he grabbed his injured arm, causing the protagonist to cry out in pain. The guy in black asked him if he would give it to him voluntarily. Then, he would at least spare his life. The protagonist screamed that he would never give him anything. The rival said, well, then he was finished. It was a pity to break his hopes. Although he had contracts with spirits of the same rank with him. Let him prepare for death. He would get what he deserved. Suddenly the aura around the opponent changed. Magic balls appeared. He said that he had just gained full control over this forest. The protagonist was surprised to realize what had happened. A black darkness with many reaching hands appeared near the rival. He exclaimed, let Faye try, boundless despair. The protagonist stood up and activated ice needles, but it did not work. He just had to run away from the many hands of darkness. He cursed. The opponent added to his worries. All his attacks were absorbed by pitch darkness. The hands of darkness began to grab him, and he fell. The opponent stood in front of him and said that he was pathetic in his attempts. Did not he see it himself? It was time to break their pathetic contract with the ice spirit and demote him. The protagonist thought about Frill, demote her? The guy continued that, however, it was too late now, because now he would die, and the ice would become part of his power. The protagonist said something, but the opponent did not hear him. He asked what he said. The protagonist shouted loudly, "Let him take his words back. With her ability to freeze everything in the world, does he really think she cannot freeze the darkness? Let him not underestimate her." The opponent was surprised by his speech. MC continued that he was the one who broke the contract with him, so let him use his power here and now. The opponent said what nonsense and used freeze the world. He shouted that it was impossible. He was a god, and he would never defeat him. The protagonist raised his sword and attacked him. But suddenly, something happened that the protagonist did not expect. His sword broke on the opponent's defense. The guy laughed like, "Let him get it." Faye's legs buckled and he fell. He realized that he used too much power. Is this really where it will end? Suddenly, Frill appeared next to him and indignantly shouted at the guy, how dare he offend her protagonist? The opponent did not expect her to appear. He was amazed. Is she the ice beast? Frill used ice defense. He grinned and said that she is beautiful. Now he wants to get her even more quickly. Why would she need this pathetic boy? She should go to him instead. The spirit replied that he shouldn't make her laugh. A worthless thing like him would soon disappear. She would rather die than fall into his hands. Frill dealt him an icy blow, and he cried out, his body, how stupid, the Emperor's sword of darkness. She showed him the middle finger and told him to get out of here. The enemy retreated, cursing her and his situation. The protagonist asked her why she showed herself. After all, he had kept them locked up for so long. The girl told him not to worry. She understood how he felt then. She expressed her regret that he had to go through such a hard time, but before disappearing, she would heal his wounds. Let him not forget, she was a spirit who had made a contract with him. He had every right to use her powers for as long as he needed. She would continue to share her power with him. Frill disappeared. The protagonist called her by name, and her voice reminded him that they are always with him. After some time, the protagonist came home and, lying on the bed, thought, like that guy who used the black magic of the Imperial Spirit of Darkness. He really felt the fear of death. He was probably too proud. Somewhere in the depths of his mind, he thought that there was no one more powerful than him, but he was weak. Deep down, he was very weak. After some time at the academy, the girls began to wish him good morning. Iris called out to him and told him that Geisen received a love letter yesterday. He blushed in irritation and shouted, "Let that female gorilla stop. If she does not shut up right now, he will kill her." Suddenly, Struff came up to her from behind, hugged her and shouted, "How dare he treat a beautiful lady like that? Why the hell is he talking to her like that?" Iris asked embarrassedly, "Is he back again?" Geisen shouted irritably, "What did he forget in their class?" The girl, trying to break free, said that he should get away from her. She had something very interesting to tell. Struff pressed himself against her and replied that even such an untouchable he still liked her. MC asked, "So what happened with the love letter?" Iris began to tell a story about how he found a love letter on his desk and confidently said that this is what an irresistible man looks like. Suddenly, another girl appeared next to him and embarrassedly apologized, saying that she put the envelope on the wrong desk. Struff mockingly noted, "Of course, a guy who talks to ladies like that will never be popular." Geisen gave him the finger and yelled that he asked for it. This is war. He pressed himself against Iris and told him to stop talking nonsense. He is too busy hugging right now. Away from this conflict, Melia told the protagonist that she is so glad that he is okay. At this time, Struff let go of Iris and told her to wait a little. Now he will quickly finish with him and hug her tightly again. Geisen mockingly said how cute it is that even she has a lover. Suddenly, the protagonist came up to them and, separating them, said that they should slow down on this. Struff began to approach Iris and said that she is so cute. She should ignore what this idiot was saying. After some time, Bonnet's territory extends to the edge of this forest. Mother Lana, the former head of the Dirkserk family, received only one territory as a reward. And this is this forest. The mercenaries began to quickly approach the house. One of them asked the other if he thought the wind was too strong here. He agreed and added that it felt like the whole forest was moving. The main mercenary asked, "What kind of nonsense is this? They simply cannot fail this mission. If they are caught, they understand everything, right? So if anyone is scared, they should go home and shiver in their bed while they still can." At this time in the house, Lana worriedly asked how she would explain everything to Faye when he arrived. She never told him that she was one of the 7. She thought about how she'd introduced herself as Lana Dirk that day. She would not live like a noble. She would not live like the noble families. Having decided so for herself, she lived in this forest. It would be so easy for her if only she could give up the title of the head of the ducal family. But this family name is the only thread connecting her with her mother. Suddenly, Lana heard a rustling in the street, and in the meantime, the mercenaries had already approached the house. She wondered in confusion who it could be at such a late hour. One of the mercenaries reported that it was here. So they need to bring all their magic here. Lana stood up from her chair and said she didn't think this would happen. She didn't think they would dare. The girl thought, this is the Dirksuk family. They are not magicians, but they are not spiritualists either. What is the difference? Suddenly, powerful fire tornadoes appeared on the street, but a magical barrier began to shine brightly around the house. Lana went outside and upset them, saying it was useless. Their magic would never break through this wall. They started attacking her with fiery spears and confusion, but the girl easily repelled the attack with magic, and thought that in fact, the Dirksuk family were sorcerers. The power of sorcerers comes from the forest itself, where spirits live. Only the king and his confidants, as well as Faye, who had lived with Lana for a long time, had seen this power with their own eyes. Lana suggested that she did not think there was a need to ask. They were hired by Bonnet, right? Unlike what Faye had told her, they were quite secretive. They had grown quite a bit in their abilities over the years, hadn't they? In an instant, a wave of flame erupted under the mercenaries' feet. Lana began to use her magical ability and shouted, "What if a fire starts?" They began to scream in fear, saying that this was simply ridiculous, unthinkable. Blocking high-level magic without chanting, how is that possible? They can't handle that kind of power. They need to get out of here. She thought with a smile. Important proof. She wouldn't let them get away with it. In an instant, a strong headwind started blowing and all the mercenaries were blown back closer to her. Lana said that she thought she should report to the castle to take them away. She doesn't know how to torture, because she's afraid that she might accidentally kill them. Suddenly, all the mercenaries started coughing up blood and falling to the ground. The girls screamed in fear, "What's going on? This can't be." After a while, people from the castle arrived at the scene. One of them thanked her for the message and added, "The main thing is that she is safe. He will inform His Majesty of what happened." After they left, Lana began to cry. A race born between humans and spirits. Creatures similar to elves, the Dirksuk family. They don't look like mages or spiritualists. In the whole world, she's the only sorcerer left. In the true sense of the word, there's no one left in the world who can truly understand her. Sometime later, while in the academy, while in the cafeteria, Geisen wondered why those who use magic aren't called sorcerers. He once read a fantasy book about sorcerers. They use magic too, so what's the difference? Iris was puzzled, unexpectedly noticing that he would think of such a thing. MC explained that magic is just a tool for them. In order to take someone's life, magic is the most effective weapon. They, the sorcerers, embody their power into magic and use it. In other words, they borrow existing magic. What if there are even greater possibilities beyond the sorcery they know? To freely transform their power into a completely new energy. He thinks that such a person can be called a sorcerer. Iris asked Geisen in confusion if he understood. He answered dumbly that he didn't really. Sometimes Faye seems a little crazy. After school in the student council room, everyone sat down at the table. They all asked together, "Cleaning?" Layla Mileto, the student council president, agreed with a smile and added that the student council had recruited more people this year, so the old room had become a little cramped. So she talked to the principal, and the room next to it became free. The students of class 2E and 2A were thoughtful when they said that this would be their first job as student council assistants. Who would have thought that it would be cleaning? MC asked with displeasure, did they really need so many people to clean? Layla winked and said, "Don't grumble. Don't worry, if there was too much work, they would help them too." After a while, they entered the room and saw a lot of junk. Bram shouted furiously, "Why on earth should he clean such a dirty place?" All the students looked sharply at the protagonist. He wondered in bewilderment, why were they looking at him like that? And they no longer attacked like before. Suddenly Alice came up to him and smiled and noted that it seemed like it would be quite difficult. But they should try together, okay? The protagonist thought that she had become much more confident after the fight. He agreed and added that it would clearly take a lot of time. Graham came up to him and whispered in his ear, maybe they could leave unnoticed? Celia, passing by, menacingly said that they couldn't. They couldn't force someone else to do all the work for them. It was unforgivable. Graham excitedly made an excuse that he was just joking. Just a joke, right? MC noted that it was hard to recognize a joke in this. Graham opened the door discontentedly and said that he was leaving. Graham remarked that he was a selfish bastard. The protagonist took a mop and suggested that they begin. Suddenly, 3 more people entered the room. Adonis Owen, Bale Agus and Alori Nelto, members of the 3rd 4th year student council. He noted with a smile that they were here to help. Bale added that Layla asked them to join them. Surprisingly, Adonis usually prefers to skip school. He thought better of him. He replied with a smile that this was only in front of the younger ones. He should behave like a senior. Let him apologize, but what kind of senior is he? This is simply impossible. Bale thought with displeasure. Again, he was making fun of him. At this time, Alori, holding books in her hands, fell awkwardly and noted that these books were heavy. Graham rushed to her and grabbing the books said that he was holding this. Celia hit him with displeasure and shouted at him not to behave so impudently. At this point, MC, looking tired, noted that there was no end in sight. Alice, smiling, suggested that they try together. Suddenly, Glenn Merson, one of the Great Seven, appeared from the shadows and asked discontentedly if they could be quieter. Could they just work? Alori noted with admiration that today he had managed a perfect 7 thurs. In the future, there would definitely be a wide bald spot where the parting had been. After a while, Graham noted that they had made great progress today. Celia added that if they continued like this, they would finish everything tomorrow. They began to disperse and say goodbye to the protagonist. He said goodbye to them in response and thought that Milia was probably waiting for him today. He had to hurry. Suddenly, the girls called out to him with tears in their eyes. MC turned around and asked what was the matter. Cecilia asked the protagonist if he would have some time. He answered her that he would not. Milia was waiting for him. Alice exclaimed, "They definitely need to talk to him." The protagonist noticed that they were very persistent, as if he had something to talk about with them. His sisters were very upset by his refusal. Alice burst into tears. Faye's heart sank and he said tomorrow. Cecilia asked him again, what did he say? He answered that tomorrow, after they finished cleaning, he was not against talking. Would that suit them? The sisters happily agreed to his proposal. Leaving, the protagonist scolded himself. What was this? Why did he agree? But before his eyes appeared the tear-stained face of his younger sister, and he thought, what kind of feeling is this? The next day, after cleaning, Layla happily exclaimed that they were finished. She turned to the assembled people and said that they were all great. They did a great job. She continued that from tomorrow, they would all meet here every day after school. They needed help to sort out the paperwork. Everyone started to get indignant. What was this? They hadn't agreed to this. She replied that their objections were not accepted. They weren't against it, were they? The assembled people grumbled sullenly. But what? Could they object? Layla summed up that everything was fine, everyone was free for today, see you tomorrow. She also said that objections were not accepted. The sisters caught the protagonist when he was sitting on the couch in the foyer. Today, they definitely wouldn't let him escape until they talked. He replied that he wasn't going to run away. What did they want to talk about? Cecilia said that she would start. The protagonist interrupted her and activated the search circle. The sisters were surprised and watched him. The protagonist used wind space. He had a magic tool in his hands. If you deploy the sphere of invisible wind, this magic prevents sounds emitted in the room from leaking out, and at the same time in the room as a whole. After that, he suggested starting a conversation. The girls sat down opposite him. Cecilia asked, does he know what is happening in their family's territory now? He answered negatively. Does it look like he knows? But judging by Bram's behavior, and thanks to the iron crystal, he has some guesses. He thought about how Milia came to this house. Cecilia said that she and Alice did not know anything until recently, and about this crystal too, as well as the fact that he collects exorbitant taxes from people. They did not know any of this. MC asked, so what? The older sister asked him, he is not going to return to the family, is he? The protagonist laughed so much that they understood everything without words. Then Cecilia stood up, and with tears in her eyes exclaimed, even if Bram and father are not there? The protagonist asked her what she meant. She wanted him to listen to them first. They didn't know that they tried to kill him 5 years ago. Faye asked irritably, so what? They want him to forgive them? The sisters both started crying, and the older sister replied that it was unlikely. They didn't even dare to dream of him forgiving them. They had been avoiding him since that fateful day, so it was all their fault. They didn't know how to act with him. They just wanted to tell him that they loved him. Please, let him not forget about it. Alice said through her tears that she loved him very much too. The protagonist was worried and didn't know how to behave. They were silent for a while. Then Cecilia said that if they left everything as it was, their family would be destroyed in the near future. But even before that happened, their people would be exhausted. And in the end, their land would simply die out. And so, they would take away their father's power on these lands. For this reason, they needed his help. After they defeat him, they want him to restore their lands with them. The protagonist, after a short thought, replied that he refused their offer. The sisters wanted to object, but he continued that it did not matter how determined they were. If they did not have the strength and ability to match their determination, then all their plans were just a veil before their eyes. Cecilia replied that he was right. The two of them would not have enough strength, but he who defeated his father could help them. Faye, without looking them in the eye, said something like, "That's why they were absolutely useless." Cecilia asked in surprise, "What was he talking about?" The protagonist opened his palm, showed them the sphere of invisible wind, and asked what it was. Did they understand? Cecilia could not say anything. Alice asked in surprise, "Was it a magic item?" He replied that it was a magic attribute. Similar things are used in the dueling halls of the royal castle. This item, of course, is a couple of notches lower in level, but it also works. The elder sister asked what he meant. He sighed heavily and said that he found this magical attribute a few minutes ago. It was in this very room. Do they understand what this means? It was clear that they did not understand. Then he explained to them. In other words, their conversations about a coup d'etat could have been heard by someone else if he had not found this thing. It does not matter what kind of help they ask for. If those who planted this item find out about it, he will be caught before he can do anything. If he wanted to destroy the Bonnet family, he would cope more effectively alone. The protagonist looked at the sisters and asked, "Ladies raised in greenhouses, did they understand him?" The sisters stood silently with their heads bowed. He grinned. How careless they were. He told them that this conversation was over. Leaving, the protagonist deactivated the wind sphere. Going outside, he thought indignantly about the sisters, and what were they thinking about? Faye suddenly felt a heaviness in his right hand and thought, what is it? Has the purity of magic decreased? But this is impossible. Once you master this power, you will never lose it. It's like riding a bicycle, only if it's from old age. But he is only 13 years old, so this is excluded. At that moment, his palm began to smoke. It was fire. Strange, now he felt that everything was as usual, purity, as before. But what was it then? Unreasonable fear? He did not think that this could be the reason. He decided at all costs to find out what all this meant. In the eastern part of the continent, closer than any other state to the habitat of demons, was the kingdom of Armando. In the eastern part of the duchy, there was one village called Calvisto, with a population of less than 1,000 people. But despite the small number of people, this village is one of the special places in the world. The inhabitants of this village are called war beasts, because its inhabitants are a special race formed between people and their enemies, demons. Representatives of the Bonnet family came to them. The most important of them showed them a check and asked, "What do you mean?" From this paper, it is clear that not even half of the taxes have been paid here. The elder of this village, named Falls, dejectedly asked him for forgiveness and replied that this year there was a bad harvest, and they do not have reserves to pay them more. The chief folded his hands and proclaimed that the amount of tax was set by Mr. Alex. Not to pay the tax, who do they think they are? Falls said that if they give more, they will simply die of hunger. The visitor impudently asked, "Does he mean to say that he does not have enough reserves to not die of hunger? Let him pay with them." The elder tried to say that this was robbery, but the chief shouted that he didn't care, even if they all died. He called them the scum of the demon tribe and added that it would be better if they didn't exist at all. The elder wilted before his speech. One girl took him by the shoulders, wanting to encourage him. The chief continued that, because of their dirty blood, they can't even use spirit magic. They are just a little stronger physically, but in other respects, they are inferior even to humans. They can't even ask a word in their defense, and still, they demand something? It seems that the animals of this village have completely lost their discipline. Falls babbled words about forgiveness. The chief replied that they would return in a week. If the elder does not pay them by that time, they will take several of their daughters, so let him try. The villagers were outraged by the words of the visitor. Later, when Mr. Alex's representatives left, one of the residents, a young strong guy, banged his fist on the table and cursed the visitors, adding that they did whatever they wanted. Falls humbly replied that there was nothing to be done. They were half beasts, so for them, they were just an eyesore. The guy indignantly turned to him and said that he was not ready to put up with this. The others present were also indignant. One said that until last year they had a good harvest, so they were somehow able to pay. The second continued that this tax, they could not pay it this year. The third asked, did they really, as they said, have to give them even the necessities of life? The strong guy saw the dejected state of the elder, turned to him, and said that it was not his fault. The second supported Falls, saying that he had always made their life as good as possible, so now they wanted him to listen to them. The strong guy was indignant. He cursed the Bonnet family. Then he said that it was getting dark. He didn't want their families to worry, so they should call it a day. They wouldn't find a way out anyway. When he got home, he told them about it. His daughter Cheryl ran out to greet him happily. The guy hugged her, said that he was home, and asked why she hadn't changed her clothes yet. The girl replied that she had just finished praying. She continued that she would become a great priestess like her grandmother. The father asked her what she had prayed for. Cheryl said that she had prayed for everyone in their village to be happy. Everyone had a hard life now, but she believed that one day a good Lord would come here and their lives would finally get better. She noticed that her father's face had been looking scary lately. The guy, overcome with emotion, hugged her. The girl complained that she was having trouble breathing. He said that she was indeed a daughter he could be proud of. Meanwhile, the protagonist sat behind a pile of books with a tired expression on his face. He said, looking at the book, that he did not understand anything. Amelia asked why he did not rest for a while. The protagonist, ignoring her words, said that there are two types of tax. The first is the state tax that must be paid to the state, and the second is the local tax, where the Lord himself determines the amount of tax for his territory. He continued in despair that if he knew that something like this would happen to him, he would have started studying this issue a long time ago. Who would have thought that he would own his own land? He practiced magic so much, but when a person owns a territory, along with the land, he takes responsibility for the lives of the people living on it. You can't just pretend that it does not concern him. He took a breath, said okay, he would figure it out, and finally turned his attention to the girl. He said that while he was at the castle, she had gone home to get her things, hadn't she? Had she had a good rest? The girl honestly admitted to him that this was not so. She felt much more at home here, and she was also very glad that he had returned. He thought for a moment, and then told her that when he took over the territory, perhaps, no, definitely, he would have to move out. He was sure that he would have to go to the estate, but what about her? She thought that she would very much like to follow him, but now that he was a nobleman, if she followed him, it could lead to all sorts of gossip. She was really very happy for him, but she did not want to bother him. He continued that he belonged to a branch of the Bonnet family. He was afraid that he would have to return to their house. She thought sadly that, as she had expected, he would not stop her. The protagonist was wondering what would happen to Princess Letitia's magic training. Amelia's question even brought tears to her eyes. She looked very unhappy. Meanwhile, in the Bonnet family's house, Cecilia was looking at a photograph of her sister, and Faye. Once, 6 years ago, on his birthday, the three of them went into a store, and Cecilia announced that this was the best glass shop in the kingdom, the property and pride of the Bonnet family. The store's director said that she was infinitely flattered by her kind words. His sister showed him a glass bird on a branch and asked him how he liked it, for example. The protagonist said with admiration that everything here was so beautiful. Cecilia laughed and told him to choose what he liked because today was his birthday. He was surprised. Was it possible to do that? The protagonist enthusiastically thanked her. She thought with affection that their little brother was so cute. Even the director was touched by him. Cecilia showed him the next thing. How did he like this product? He was confused and said that everything here was so beautiful that he had difficulty choosing. When the director asked him how he liked it, did he choose something? MC answered her the same as his sister. Everything here was so beautiful that he had difficulty deciding. He said that he needed to think and apologized for the wait. The director was captivated by him. She said with a smile that he could take his time and choose calmly. She noted that he was very cute. Everyone described him as terrifying, but to her he seemed like such an angel. Cecilia agreed with her. He was very cute. Suddenly one object caught his attention, and he asked the director what was there. He pointed to a glass ball. The director answered that it was unprocessed glass. First it was melted, and only then shaped and painted. The protagonist was amazed by its purity and beauty. She asked him if he liked it. He answered positively and added that it was so pure, untainted, so genuine. The sisters were amazed by his words and his choice. Cecilia said, when he said the word pure, what did he mean? The protagonist smiled and answered, he thinks it is beautiful. The sister asked again, beautiful? The protagonist confirmed this and added that it is pure as a heart. The sisters looked into the ball, and their faces were reflected in it. Cecilia asked Alice if she would mind if this ball became a gift for their brother. Alice was, of course, not against it. The director was confused. This glass was untreated. It is not a product. The sisters looked at her pleadingly, and Cecilia said that he liked this particular ball. Let her sell it to them. Alice begged, let her be so kind to them. The director could not refuse them. She said that this ball cost 600 L. The girls paid her and thanked her warmly. She walked them to the carriage and told them to return home carefully. The protagonist did not stop looking at his ball and thanking his sisters. He admired his gift. Cecilia thought with love about how cute their brother was. The director, watching the carriage, mentally addressed MC and wished him to grow up as pure as this glass. Cecilia went to the shelf with books. There, among the literature, lay that very glass ball. She remembered their meeting, and thought that she was wrong, thinking that he would forgive them. How wrong she was that he would help them. They had such a chance, but each time, again and again, she chose the wrong words. The girl thought bitterly that they would never return to those times. The next day at the academy, Layla thanked everyone present and noted that the student council meeting was over for today. She complained that she was very tired. Graham noticed that the protagonist looked tired as never before. Did something happen to him? The protagonist replied that he had to study something last night. Then Layla turned to him. She had something for him. Let him stay for a while. She told everyone else that they were free to go. When everyone left, she handed him a book. He asked what it was. The girl replied that he should look at it himself and understand everything at once. The protagonist opened it, glanced through it, and was surprised. This book was a real treasure. It contained a lot of important information on how to manage the estate. He asked, is it true? Can he take it? The girl laughed and answered positively. She herself had used it before, but she had already memorized everything, so she would not need this book anymore. He smiled with delight and thanked her from the bottom of his heart. She simply saved him. But then he asked, puzzled, how did she know? Did he tell her that he received a title from His Majesty? She laughed and answered that everyone already knew about it, and rumors about it were already circulating among the nobility. She added that her father would like to meet him. Is he free next weekend? The protagonist answered that he was free. On the second day there will be a ceremony of conferring the title in the royal castle. The girl exclaimed that this was great news. Their house is just near the kingdom. Then she and her family will wait for him the day before the ceremony. He does not mind, does he? MC did not mind, which made Layla happy. He looked at the book and was happy that it appeared in his possession. He answered the girl that they had agreed with her. And so the first day of the holiday weekend came. The protagonist arrived at the Maret family estate. He was met by a whole crowd of maids, all of whom bowed to him in greeting. The oldest of them said that they had been waiting for him and invited him to follow her. MC looked around and thought, although this place was nominally called an estate, the girl's family lived here practically all the time. The maid opened the door for him and invited him in. He was met by Sarolma Maret. He happily greeted the protagonist and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. Protagonist shook his hand in greeting and admitted that he was right. They really had not seen the Duke for a long time. The Duke noted that 7 years had passed since their last meeting. Protagonist said that it was true, since the first time he met him and his daughter. It was his 6th birthday, and he was glad that the Duke still looked so cheerful. Sarolma laughed and suggested that he leave formalities aside. He told him not to be shy, let him sit down at the table. The protagonist apologized to him. The maid poured them tea. The Duke offered him to treat himself to this wonderful drink, for which Faye thanked him. The protagonist took a sip of tea and noted that it was very tasty, not too hot and not too cold, so softly spreads down the throat, aromatic and fragrant. The Duke replied that he should let him know if he wanted more. MC thanked him again and said that this was the best tea he had ever tasted. Sarolma was glad that his guest liked the drink. He was also partial to tea, which was indeed delicious. The Duke noted that the protagonist relaxed. Faye asked him how exactly he could be useful to him today. Layla's father spoke. It seems he wants to quickly get down to business. Today, in fact, he just wanted to meet and see him, but as he himself understands, everything is much more complicated. The protagonist asked him what he meant. The Duke hesitated, not knowing how to continue, but then asked him how he felt about getting engaged to his daughter. The protagonist, taken by surprise, spilled tea on the table, which was immediately wiped clean by a nimble maid, and asked what he was doing. The Duke was embarrassed and asked what was the matter. He didn't like his daughter. He always thought that his Layla was a beauty, very kind, and with a good reputation. The protagonist answered that it was not at all about that. It was just so unexpected. Besides, he and his daughter had quite a big age difference. He wondered if Layla herself knew about this conversation. The Duke apologized for such a sudden conversation and continued that they had a difference of only a few years. When they get older, the difference will cease to be noticeable at all. The protagonist was curious as to why he had decided to give his precious daughter to him. Sarolma replied that he was being modest and vain. In modern aristocratic society, there were not many good young men like him. The protagonist was surprised. Was he good? The Duke apologized and said that now he had received the title of Baron, but in his opinion, in the future he would undoubtedly rise to Duke. Not only he, everyone thought so, and in the end he was able to defeat Alex Bonnet. Faye replied that he was flattered that the Duke had high hopes for him, but he had no desire to receive a higher title. Layla's father was surprised. Is that so? However, it did not matter to him. Regardless of whether he aspired to it or not, he was sure that Faye would achieve it anyway. That is what it means to have power. That is why he was talking to him about it before that time came. The protagonist objected, because he had just said everything he wanted. The Duke smiled and remarked that it sounded as if he was looking for a reason to refuse. Perhaps his heart had already decided everything? The protagonist exclaimed that there was nothing like that. Sorolma was surprised. Really? He started talking about Her Majesty Lettuce, but then stopped short and asked for forgiveness. Faye asked him why he suddenly mentioned her. The Duke waved it off, saying it doesn't matter. He's not asking him to decide right now, just let him think about his proposal. MC had never thought about it that way. Yes, indeed, Layla is very beautiful. Sometimes she is too active, but she is not a bad person. And the status of the Duke suited him. Of course, marriage has its advantages. He immediately pulled himself up. What was he even thinking about? The Duke said, who knows, maybe everything will work out. Faye decided that he should think about it. The next morning, the day of the title assignment ceremony came. The protagonist was nervous. Through the half-open door of the carriage, he saw a girl who was clearly waiting for him. She said that they were waiting for him. He thought it was Lettuce's maid. She grabbed his hand, pulled him along and said that he should follow her. He should go here. The girl was in such a hurry, he exclaimed. Where were they going in such a hurry? Finally, they stopped near a building, and the girl, pointing with her hand, said that he should go there. Lettice appeared in the window. She exclaimed that she had been waiting for him so much, and pulled him through the window opening into the room. He was surprised. Everything was so sudden. Something happened? And why through the window? The princess became embarrassed and said, because it was here that she remembered them. However, it didn't matter. Yesterday he went to Duke Maret, didn't he? The protagonist answered that it was so, but what was the matter? She asked him what they talked about. MC stupidly asked her question again and hesitated. He was not ready to answer. The girl screamed impatiently. Why was he silent? Let him answer right now. After all, he was offered to marry Layla? She already knows everything. The protagonist was amazed. How did she know this? And why was she reacting like that? She exclaimed that she knew it. If the Duke invited him, then the conversation could only be about this. The protagonist was amazed. What was she talking about? The princess looked at him intently and asked what his response to the Duke's offer was. Faye honestly admitted. He told him that he would think about it. Lettice was furious. He did not refuse. He could not say anything from surprise, and the princess arrogantly told him to leave here. They had nothing more to talk about. She began to push him out. MC said that he would leave and asked her for forgiveness. The maid apologized to him. When he was back on the street, he wondered what the hell was going on. At that moment, Trent called out to him, next to whom was Anna. Trent said that they were waiting for him. Let him follow them. He will take him to the hall where the ceremony will take place. Anna also called him and smiled. The butler thought that today the protagonist will be awarded the title of Baron. After the ceremony, it will be necessary to inform the community, and of course, his classmates. The protagonist went to the hall, knelt before the king, who declared that he considers the ceremony of assigning the title open. He addressed him as Faye Dirk. MC responded to his call. Kroll continued that in the name of Alfredo Armando, he grants him a baronetcy. As a subject in the service of the kingdom of Armando, his duty is to serve their country in any situation. And as part of the preparation for emergency situations, he expects daily training and discipline. He also receives the village of Calvisto as his property, as well as a portion of the state funds for management and administrative expenses. The protagonist bowed his head to the king and said that it was a great honor for him. He would do everything possible to justify the trust of His Majesty. Sometime after the ceremony ended, the protagonist got into the carriage to go home. Trent and Anna saw him off. They asked him to take care of himself. MC warmly thanked them, and at that moment Lettice called out to him. She stood next to the butler and his sister, caught her breath, and asked him to come and visit her as soon as possible. She added that he should definitely come. The protagonist was amazed, then smiled and promised to do so. The next day he came to the academy library. After walking through several shelves of books, he was upset. As he thought, there were no books about dark imperial spirits here. He chose several similar ones and began to read. After reading a few pages, he thought about the contents. It was only natural. The imperial spirits of light and darkness, they had never openly appeared to people. But since there were imperial spirits of the 5 attributes, it was only natural that in the darkness and in the light there would be spirits comparable in strength to the 5 beasts. He had always suspected such a thing, and he had personally seen it, met it. He remembered the last time he returned from the royal castle. The person who attacked him that time was a dark spirit. In order to defeat him, the protagonist had to use the power of the imperial beasts. A person with such power, how could he hide it so carefully that no one knew about it? Suddenly, the protagonist was surprised when he saw something in the book. He saw the story of the first battle in which the 5 great heroes fought together. It was the year 935th according to the sacred calendar. The 5 heroes first gathered together in a small village on the border of the kingdom of Armando, where half humans and half demons live. That day, each of them was summoned to the royal capital. They ended up in this village looking for a place to stay for the night. A young dark-haired guy thought that it was already dark, it was dangerous to go further, and he needed to find a place to spend the night. Suddenly, he heard the rustling of leaves behind him. He asked who it was. A guy with dark hair and glasses came out to meet him. His clothes had the same crest badge as his. He thought about it and asked, was he also summoned to the royal castle? The guy answered that it was, but it was already dark, so he was trying to find a place to spend the night here. They saw a house, came to it and asked the owner if there was a place nearby where they could spend the night. The owner apologized to them and replied that this village is very small, there is no such thing as an inn here. They saw 3 more people appear next to the owner. They were a girl with long blonde hair, a guy with baubles on his long hair, and another young man with a short haircut. All 3 had the same coat of arms on their chests. They were asked if they were also looking for a place to stay for the night. The dark-haired traveler replied that they were. 2 more villagers approached them and asked them if something had happened. The travelers explained that they were trying to find a place to spend the night. They were going to the royal capital. One of the villagers said that this was a problem. It was quite dangerous here. Demons had recently attacked a neighboring village. The second villager told them that if they did not mind, they could stay in his house. The other villagers also hospitably offered them their homes. The travelers agreed and said that they were in their debt. The dark-haired guy understood that the villagers could not afford to move the entire village to another place, so its inhabitants could only tremble at the threat of an attack by demons. When the travelers settled in the house, they were brought a meager dinner. The owner of the house apologized to them. They could not give them a worthy reception. What they have is on the table. The dark-haired guy was touched by the hospitality of these half-humans and said that this was quite enough, and added that someday he would definitely repay them for their kindness. Night fell. The watchman on the tower saw hundreds of sparkling eyes in the darkness and shouted that demons were advancing on them. Panic arose in the village. The inhabitants shouted to each other that the demons were coming here, to them. The owner of the house where the dark-haired guy was staying ran into his room and exclaimed that they were in big trouble. It seemed that demons were moving here. He lamented, saying that they had reached their village too. Meanwhile, the lookout was informing the residents that there were many enemies, a whole horde of them. Hundreds, no thousands of demons. The owner of the house clutched his head and said in despair that this was it. Their village would no longer exist. This was the end. The dark-haired traveler thought, peering out the window, that he had a contract with the imperial spirit of fire. But how far could he go against them alone? But those 4, if they were summoned to the capital, they must be quite skilled. At that moment, his head suddenly began to hurt. He groaned, grabbed his head and thought, it started again. What is this? This headache was exhausting him. The owner of the house turned to him and noted that it was very dangerous here. He should leave immediately. The guy was touched by his concern. The man cares about others much more than about himself. The guy turned to him and said, he thinks it's time for him to thank him for his hospitality and kindness. The owner was amazed. What was the traveler talking about? The guy hurried to the exit. The owner wanted to stop him, but the traveler left the house. He realized that to fight the demons of the human race, that's why the magic of the spirits brought them here tonight. The highest of the spirits, he has a contract with the imperial spirit. If he can't do it, then who can? He went out to meet the danger and called the demons to appear before him. The resident called out to one of the great heroes and excitedly shouted, what is he going to do? This place is very dangerous. He smiled and told them not to worry and explained that he is an emperor-level magician. The hero began to use magic technique and say that he is the one who made a contract with her, the one to whom all her powers are granted and entrusted. Therefore, now he asks her for only one favor, let Freya appear. In an instant, all the imperial spirits appeared next to him. The hero, in complete shock, thought that this really gives hope. The others folded their hands and created a sword containing 5 imperial beasts at once. At this time, the demons began to attack fiercely, but in the blink of an eye, the countless tribe of demons disappeared without a trace. And in the place where the 5 heroes had previously stood, there was a huge hole. And then, this place turned into a lake. After a while, the protagonist, holding a book in his hand, noted that this was an old legend that probably had many adaptations. 5 imperial beasts fused in one sword at once. He thought that from that day on, he had sealed the power of the 5 imperial beasts. but in fact, he knew too little about their power. But that guy was clearly a master of dark spirits. He was tired of constantly running away. He was forced to face it. The next morning, the protagonist asked Melia if she had already collected everything. The girl excitedly agreed and approached him. MC asked if everything was okay. He had told her many times that she could continue living in this room without any problems. Melia replied with a smile that everything was fine. She couldn't rely on him forever. The protagonist said that in that case, he wouldn't force her. Faye was heading to the village of Calvisto, a territory that had recently been transferred to him. He was going to conduct a preliminary inspection and then move there within a month. The protagonist approached the carriage and said goodbye to the girl. Once inside, Trent noted that it would take some time to get to the village of Calvisto. If he was tired, he could sleep a little. There was nothing else to do anyway. MC began to lie down and replied that he didn't mind. After a while, Anna woke him up and happily pointed out that they were almost there. The protagonist looked out the window and said admiringly that it was amazing here. There was so much greenery and farms. He thought that in the house where he lived with Lana, everything was so green too. Trent called out to him and pointed to the side, noting that his land was over there. The protagonist was disappointed to think about why it was so deserted here. This time, the king ordered the Bonnet family to renounce their title and give up part of their eastern territories. Faye's holdings are not that large. There are 4 main villages on its territory. Until now, the Bonnets had been collecting taxes from their subjects that they could not pay. Among them were the residents of the village of Calvisto, the half-demon, half-human inhabitants. In addition to the main taxes, fictitious taxes were also collected. People were even forced to find their own food. Many subjects were unable to provide themselves with a stable diet, which is why the workforce had greatly decreased. Recently, they could not even find the money to pay the taxes. Speaking of the economy, for the Bonnets, this land is just a depreciating asset that does not bring any benefit. In other words, debts. So, even if he gave this land to Faye, he knew that he would not lose anything from it. MC thoughtfully assumed that he would never give him the land for nothing. Suddenly, the carriage was attacked and Trent was wounded by an arrow. MC wondered fearfully, what was that? He was wounded, but who was it? For what purpose did these people attack? Suddenly, a barrage of arrows hung over the carriage, but the protagonist quickly enchanted Trent's body and got out. He ordered Anna to stay behind him. The protagonist created a wall of fire and began to reflect the arrows when suddenly the girl called out to him. He turned around and, seeing Trent's condition, thought that most likely, if he does not use full healing as soon as possible, his body will not cope on its own. Restorative magic of the full healing class belongs to advanced magic. It requires a higher level of concentration than other types, and its use, accordingly, is much more difficult. Anna called out to him with tears and pointed at Trent. MC shouted with a smile that he knew everything would be fine. He would definitely save him. The protagonist began to heal both bodies at the same time. The bandits started shooting again and shouted that their defense was one big gap. The protagonist used magic and, having reflected the arrows back at the opponents, thought, at least this way. Both of them, at least he managed to stop the bleeding. He stood up and seriously said, "Let them come out and not be cowards." What is their goal? He thought that their lives depended only on their own next words. Anna called out to him with tears in her eyes again. MC apologized and explained that they would have to wait a little longer. He used the search circle and, having found all the opponents, thought, there is one more from the village. Suddenly, one of the bandits made a distraction, and the moment Faye turned around, he was shot with an arrow and pierced in the leg. The main character bent over in pain, and at that moment, the bandit grabbed the beast girl. He sarcastically noted that he had done well, but if he didn't want him to finish off the bastard, he should quickly give him all the money he had. MC was confused, wondering if these were the people of Calvisto village. He asked if this was all for money. The bandit agreed and shouted that they were close to the royal court. They must have a lot of money, right? The protagonist asked if they had decided to do this for a measly amount of money. He shouted furiously that rich people like him would never understand that. After all, this whole world is based on money. MC seriously wondered if they were so willing to hurt others to satisfy their own desires. The bandit shouted angrily that he was really annoying. He could live a decent life, he had nothing to worry about. The protagonist replied that he could understand the reason for their attack. But that girl he's holding hostage? Are they jealous of her life too? Or is that one thing and this another? They only do what's good for them. How much longer are they going to make up excuses for themselves? The bandits began to attack him furiously, shouting that he shouldn't even dare lecture them. MC pushed them away with magic in an instant. One of the attackers excitedly noted that he had recently heard that there would be a new lord in these lands. That lord from the Seven, Alex Bonnet, had been defeated, which meant that he was the creepy mage Faye Bonnet, who was rumored to have died 6 years ago. The protagonist corrected him, saying that his last name was Dirk. He had renounced the Bonnet name. Well, now that they finally knew who he was, were they ready to die? The bandits began to run away in fear, shouting that they would never defeat the one who had defeated a mage with a top-level spirit. MC started using magic and asked, after all, do they really think they can just run away? He used the wind cutter ability and knocked the opponents down, tying them up with the ground rope ability. The protagonist approached one of the bandits and asked, are they ready now? Suddenly, Anna called out to him hysterically and pointed at Trent. MC quickly rushed to him and started healing. Suddenly, an archer attacked him from behind, but Faye caught the arrow with one hand. He wondered, did he still not understand? He is currently busy healing. The protagonist thought that he was preventing him from concentrating on healing. He was forced to waste precious time on it. He covered himself in a magical aura and shouted that they did not need to hate him for killing them. One of the bandits fearfully noted, he told them that they should retreat. They can't handle him. MC used the ability Water Web and literally began to drown the opponents. The girl screamed with tears in her eyes that they must not be killed. The protagonist explained that he could not afford to continue to drag this out any longer. He could not heal his comrade, constantly distracted by their attacks. She herself had just been held hostage by them, hadn't she? There are people in this world who do not understand when they are spoken to politely. The girl burst into tears and shouted that, however, if he killed them, he would become the same as them. After some time, they came to the village itself. The protagonist worriedly wondered what the villagers were afraid of them for. But for what reason? However, he could imagine. Are they watching them? They probably can't calm down. He asked Trent why they didn't go outside the village for a while. After a while, already in the forest, MC thought about how exciting it was. He didn't know if he could handle it alone. When they finished all the formalities, Trent and Anna would return to the castle. He was worried, but they had their own work. Nothing could be done. Suddenly, bright rays of the sun fell on them. Trent called out to him and pointed to an incredibly beautiful lake landscape. MC noted that they had passed this place on the way to the village. It was beautiful here. Trent called out to him, and thanking him for saving him, noted that if he hadn't been there, he would have already died. The protagonist objected, saying that if he hadn't been there, then nothing would have happened to him. Trent disagreed and thought, the life of a servant largely depends on the attitude of his master. How lucky those who will have to serve him will be in the future. He noticed that the emotions he felt here indicated that this was a truly wonderful place. That's what he was talking about. By the way, what was he planning to do next? MC was confused and asked what he meant. Trent explained that he thought they were similar in some way. That's what made him curious. After all, he, like him, had lost faith in anything. Oh, and it didn't matter. It was stupid, so he shouldn't worry about it. He was just curious about what kind of path his master would take in the future. The protagonist was dumbfounded by the question and wondered what he really wanted. He had never thought about it before. He explained that, whatever the case, he was now going to make this land that had been given to him rich. Trent smiled and replied that it was amazing. If possible, he would also like to help him. It was a pity that he couldn't do it. MC was completely confused and wondered what he was talking about. This conversation, what did it mean? Sometime later, already in the village, Baruch met them and greeted them happily. He noted that they helped his daughter so much. The protagonist refused, saying that it was his fault. The man emphasized that he really was a very modest person. Faye was surprised to notice that he was not like the others. Let him tell why the villagers were so wary of them. Baruch explained that, as they might have already noticed, they were only half human. For this reason, their people were constantly oppressed. He was one of the few who treated them sincerely and kindly. MC, with horror in his eyes, said that they were afraid of them. Baruch apologized for causing them so much trouble and added that he saw that his companion was injured. The protagonist excitedly disagreed, thanked him and added that, in addition, he originally came here for a reason. Suddenly, the headman of Falls interrupted him. He reported that he had prepared the documents he asked for. Baruch, perplexed, asked what other documents. The chief explained that this gentleman was their next lord. Don't underestimate him, thinking that he was just a child. This man had defeated Alex Bonnet, and his reward was their village. He must have been disappointed to be rewarded with only this poor land. But even on this land, they, the people of this village, struggled daily to survive. Thought after thought that one day happiness would knock on their door, and now their future depended on him. They could trust him, right? He was their last ray of hope. MC extended his hand with a smile and replied that it was now his job to make this land rich. He would be happy if they helped him with that. Falls cried, and shaking his hand, asked him to please take care of them. The protagonist thought that after that, the chief led him through the remaining 3 villages. He introduced him as the owner of those lands, and finally, they were returning home. After a while, standing near the carriage, the protagonist said with a smile that he was glad the magic worked. Trent apologized to him. Falls wished them to take care of themselves and added that they would wait for their arrival. A little while later, MC, sitting in the carriage, read a book and was very surprised. Upon arriving home, Trent said that he should have a good rest today. The protagonist replied that he and Anna should also take care of themselves. Lying on the bed, he thought that he was very tired. Well, he has exactly 1 week to choose his path, and next week he is moving. It feels like this is not really happening to him. There is a lot of work ahead. MC turned around excitedly and asked if Melia thought he could handle it. Catching loneliness in the room, he thought that she was no longer here. So much has happened since he moved here. You only need to look forward. Now he is a lord. It is no longer just his business. The next day at the castle, the king asks how his first visit to the village went. The MC reports that he has many serious challenges ahead of him. He does not think it will be easy, but he will do his best. The king orders a servant to bring a bag and explains that it is a small fee for management. Let him check this bag. The protagonist, seeing a lot of money, thanks him and says that he will use it responsibly. He orders the servant to leave and asks what happened. He looks very tense. Does he really not want to talk about it? The MC asks how much he knows about the current situation in Calvisto village. From the reports Alex gave him from time to time through the minister, has he been there personally? The king nervously asks what is going on. The protagonist explains that people are dying of hunger and exorbitant taxes. The situation there is so dire that the fact of theft of funds for the maintenance of the village becomes obvious. The matter urgently needs reform. The king asked angrily, what was he talking about? MC apologized and admitted that he had been too presumptuous. He realized that he had handed over the reins of power to Alex. It was hard to imagine that things were really that bad. He thought about the fact that in addition to the messages from Alex, the minister in charge of those lands also sent regular reports. The king replied that he understood everything. They would treat this situation with full responsibility. They would investigate the causes and find solutions to restore justice. Did he have any other questions? The protagonist hesitated, afraid to ask. The king reassured him that he could ask for anything. MC shouted out that he had 2 servants in the castle. He wanted to know if he could give them to him. Let him forgive him. He should know when to stop. The king laughed and explained that he himself wanted to talk about it. Who would have thought that he was interested in this too? In fact, Trent and Anna, who accompanied him to the village, offered their services themselves. He wanted to ask about this, right? He could ask them personally. Suddenly, the doors to the hall opened and Anna and Trent entered the room. MC was completely shocked and asked why. The servant answered with a smile that their conversation yesterday was the answer to why. He would like to serve him. This is his and Anna's common desire. The protagonist noted that this is what those words meant. Trent agreed, saying that it would be impossible if His Majesty or he himself were against it. The king said that he does not want to become a tyrant. He will not hold back someone who wants to leave. He has a heart, right? Trent continued that now everything depends on Faye's reaction. MC thought that he was very glad to hear this, but for a butler there is no greater honor than serving in the royal castle. Why did he choose him and not a person with a high title? Trent said that it was not about honor or profit. He wanted to serve him. Could he just accept it? The protagonist shouted that he was very happy. Please let them take care of him. Trent swore that he would serve him with all his heart. The next day after school, the students asked with displeasure, patrolling the city. Layla agreed with a smile and explained that they would all become members of the student council someday. That's right, so it's time for them to get used to this job now. Celia said that's why they would organize patrolling the city. Layla agreed and added that everyone would be on the student council. They would work at night, patrolling each district, but they shouldn't worry. At first they would be accompanying them. Alori said with a sly smile that the time had finally come when they could hand over some of the responsibility to their juniors. Layla happily said that from now on, the recruitment of volunteers was open. 2 members of the student council and 2 assistants, with a weekly rotation. 4-person groups. MC thought discontentedly that if he were to form groups from the existing members, he would only have to rely on luck, just so as not to get caught with Bram. Layla took out the ball and explained that the first group would start from today and would work until the end of the week. The first group consisted of Glenn, Alice, Layla, and Faye. After a while, they went out on their first patrol in the city. MC thought, at least without Bram, at least for that. Glenn called out to him and asked, he had recently become a baron, right? The protagonist agreed with a smile and added that it just happened. He asked when the announcement party would be. His father is ready to come at any moment. The protagonist answered sheepishly that it was somehow wrong or something. Layla noted that he was a much more important person in this world than he thought. She thought, well, it's good that he ended up in the same group with Glenn. He shouted discontentedly that they should decide as soon as possible. MC replied that he didn't need to insist on it so much. Glenn shouted that it was for his own good. Did he need trouble? The aristocrats would constantly invite him to various parties. The protagonist thought, even if he said so, how could he announce a party in the village of Calvisto when the inhabitants there were in such a state? After some time, Layla asked what they would do afterward. Would they like to have tea somewhere, for example, since they had gathered in such a good company? Everyone began to agree, but the protagonist remained silent. Layla asked, what about him? MC agreed and thought, how could he even refuse them? After a while in the restaurant, the waiter led them to a table and closed the door. Seeing the menu on the table, Layla asked what they should order. The protagonist pushed the book towards Alice and noted that she could choose first. She shyly replied that she could do it after him. The protagonist said that she shouldn't worry because he wasn't going to order anything anyway. Alice agreed and suggested watching together. Layla, watching their dialogue, smiled softly. After a while, the building shook and a powerful demonic aura arose. All the group members excitedly ran out into the street and saw a very strong monster in the sky, similar to an animal.